Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. We will begin by first, if you don't mind, going around the room so everybody can know who everybody is. And then our first presentation will be by Mr. Gene C. Wesh. Did I pronounce it right?
Yep,
yes. Of the Department of Finance. So that's going to be. I'm Mariama, the co-chair of this committee, Quality of Life, CB1.
Stephanie Langston with the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund.
Jamie Tapp, also with the September 11th Victims Compensation Fund.
Jill Goodkind, a public member.
Jean Grillo, I'm a public member of Licensing and Permits Committee.
Diane Stein, public member.
Mitchell Froman, I'm on this committee.
Mona Akhtar, I'm a local resident and curious to learn what goes on here.
Thank you.
Michael Kettering, member of this committee.
Francis Curtis, member of this committee.
Wendy Chapman, Youth and Ed.
Mimi Flynn, member of this committee.
Lucian Reynolds, District Manager, CB1.
Hi, Hannah Wienerman with Congressman Nather's office.
Michael Farrell, I am a commercial intern on the United.
Hi, Lizzie Lee from the Office of Senator Brian Callahan.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wesh, you're on. From wherever you'd like to present.
I'm Cora.
Oh, Cora, I'm sorry.
Another gentleman here. I'm from Councilmember Chin's office. Cora.
She's very important. I didn't mean to slight her. Yes, sir.
Just attending.
Checking out the committee, as you said you would. I remember. Thank you.
You started off.
I talked to Pat about being on the agenda.
Okay.
Yes, on the agenda.
All right, well, don't worry about it. After this gentleman.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is John Wesh. I'm from the Department of Finance, specifically from the Office of the Parking Summons Advocate. It's basically a unit that was started in December of last year, and we're basically put together as an avenue to help public members with parking ticket related issues within the Department of Finance. And so basically our mission is to, independently assist members of the public who are unrepresented with all of their parking and camera ticket violation issues and complaints. We also inform the public about the parking laws, the rules and regulations, as well as DOF's policies and procedures with regards to parking tickets. And lastly, we also identify, report, and we recommend solutions to systemic problems within that parking ticket network. So the structure of our office is basically we have a location at each of the 5 business centers within the city, and we're headquartered in Manhattan at 66 John Street. So we currently have case advocates as well as an agency attorney. Along with myself, we all rotate throughout the city, and we basically see members of the public to try to help them with their parking tickets. We visit basically the busiest business centers more frequently. Currently, we are in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens 3 times a week. We're in Manhattan twice a week, and we go to Staten Island once a week. And that's basically, we're going with the flow of the volume at the business centers. But Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens are by far the busiest boroughs for parking tickets. So the schedule for when we appear at these different business centers appears on our website, which we'll discuss a little later. We're also set up online to receive requests for assistance through a web portal contact form. So anybody who needs assistance from our office, if they don't have time to come to the business centers, they could also go online, fill out a contact form to get that assistance. So the in-person assistance basically looks like this. So if you get a parking ticket, you come into the business center, you want to dispute that ticket, you could basically ask for a parking advocate before you go see a judge. And what we do at that point, we basically help members. We look at the ticket. A lot of times they don't realize they have defenses that are available to them. They may be focused on one set of facts, but they may have other defenses that are much easier to get a ticket dismissed. or just to basically understand what their rights are at the hearing, so that they understand what to expect at the hearing, so that they're in a much better position to advocate for themselves and to persuasively put on their defense. Because a lot of times they go in there, they don't have the right evidence, and they think they're going in there with a lock and load case, and they don't, and they lose. So we try to kind of take out some of the mystery in the process, and we try to help them put together the best possible case that they can in order to make their case and try to get the ticket dismissed if that's what the law calls for. And basically, as we said, every borough is covered each week according to that schedule that we have. No appointment is necessary, and we do have interpretation services available to us. And the service is free, all of our services. Our online assistance, excuse me, basically, as I've stated before, members of the public could basically access the web portal through the Department of Finance website. They could go to our page at the bottom. You could contact our office online. You fill out basically a contact form. You tell us what the issues are. You put some identifiers. We research the issue. We investigate it. We get back to the respondent or to the recipient, and we help them resolve their problem through the Department of Finance. Sometimes it comes in the form of, we're preparing them for a dispute through the online portal. If they want to dispute their tickets online, we could help them before they submit that dispute. Again, to show them ways of self-advocacy to make it more persuasive so that they understand the process, they know what kind of evidence is going to be the most persuasive to the judges and what kinds of evidence that they're supposed to give. Sometimes it's problems with penalties, sometimes it's problems, with fraudulent transactions, with the use of their registration. We help out with all of that. And they could put a form in. We usually get back to them within 48 hours. Also, case advocates are assigned, and they basically handle the day-to-day functions of the case. And it's a pretty fast turnaround time. A lot of these issues could be resolved pretty quickly, within a matter of days. Some of them are a little more intricate, and they require a lot longer investigation and work in order to get them done. But we do provide the assistance for a whole host of problems. Members of the public could also request assistance by regular mail and fax. We have a form, it's called OPSA 911. It's those forms that I put on the table. Basically, if anybody, any of your constituents have any problems, they don't want to either come to the business center, they're not comfortable online, they could basically call 311, ask to have one of those forms mailed to them, or if they just want to go online and download one of those forms, they could do that, fill out the form, they could either fax it to us, they could mail it to us. All of that basically could end up in our online portal. We create a case, an advocate is assigned, we work the case, we research, we investigate what the problem is, we try to help the recipient with whatever problem that they have, and we try to resolve it. And so that's another avenue by which they can ask for assistance. Now, who could we assist? Basically, we don't assist anybody who's represented by an attorney or broker, so we're basically looking for, a lot of passenger-plated vehicles, commercially plated vehicles, small businesses that are unrepresented. And that's the bulk of the traffic that we see and that we get. Anybody who needs help preparing for a hearing, preparing for an appeal if they don't, if they lose the hearing, seeking assistance basically to deal with unauthorized registration use, any problem with improper penalties, or if their vehicles have been seized and they want to know what all their options are. We can help them sometimes figure out options that they don't know that they have. Some more creative ways of trying to get out of jams rather than having your car seized. There are ways that you could try to work this thing out so that you could avoid a seizure. We also help people understand what the rules are. So far in our experience, what we find is a lot of ticket recipients, simply are unaware of the parking rules, or they're misconceived about those rules. There are a lot of misconceptions out there in the parking network, and we strive to educate the public to let them know, what's permissible, what's not, and ways to avoid getting parking tickets. And we also, we also help out with a whole host of other problems as well. Again, we can't assist anybody who is represented by an attorney or broker. We do not give out legal advice. We instead provide legal information to recipients, but we cannot give legal advice. We don't go into the hearing room with any of the recipients. We just basically inform them, tell them what they need to know, what their rights are, and then, you know, we send them on their way so that they're better informed to represent themselves. We cannot help anybody who's claiming that the parking laws are, you know, run afoul of the New York State or the federal Constitution. That's way above what we do. And also, if we think that, you know, the person is basically, you know, using us to you know, to have like frivolous strategies intended to try to avoid paying parking tickets or delaying paying them, you know, we really don't get involved in that either. If we also determine that the person is making fraudulent claims in an effort to dismiss those tickets, we don't deal with those. And we cannot deal with anything dealing with traffic tickets. Like if a police officer pulls somebody over for speeding or for running a red light, that's Department of Motor Vehicles, that's state, you know, traffic court. We don't deal with those. So what we did with our website is we basically enhanced the Department of Finance website to add a lot of content, everything dealing with parking summonses. And what we did is we looked at all the laws, all the rules and regulations dealing with parking summonses. We summarized everything. We put them inside into the website. Basically, you know, we did it in a way to educate the public as to what the laws are. We basically centralized that information. And it's you know, again, it's aimed to educate the public and to basically empower them to be able to effectively navigate the parking summons network, and to basically avoid pitfalls. You know, we try to identify what those pitfalls are in the system, and we try to, you know, make the website in a way, you know, that they can see what those pitfalls are so that they could handle themselves and that they could avoid them. We also, you know, self-advocacy is very important. You know, everybody who goes in there is not an attorney, and a lot of times they don't realize, you know, the level of skill that they need in order to get, you know, through some of these hearings. And so we try to educate the people. We try to give them, you know, proper tools of gathering relevant evidence and how to most effectively represent themselves at the hearing. Too many times we see cases that should be won but are lost because of poor presentation. And so we try to educate the public and you know, inform them on the rules and inform them on evidence gathering and presentation. The website also illuminates the appeals process. All right, there are plenty of pitfalls in the appeals process as well that are not very clear to the layperson, and so we try to illuminate those, and we try to reinforce, again, techniques of persuasive self-advocacy. We also provide information that allows the respondents to appreciate the risks involved and the dangers involved in an action when dealing with traffic, when dealing with parking tickets. And so the bottom line is, you know, we don't want people to just ignore parking tickets because they can't pay them or because of some other problem that they can't figure out how to resolve. We're here to help, and if they have problems, we try to inform them how to handle those problems as opposed to allowing the problem to basically escalate to the point where they have too much money to pay, they can't pay it, and then their cars become seized. So if anybody wants to contact our unit, you can go to the website www.nyc.gov/parking advocate and fill out a contact form. They could visit any of the DOF business centers as per our online schedule. They could come in, no appointment is necessary. They could walk in. Those are the addresses for all of the 5 different business centers. Again, they could call 311 to get access to the form or to get the schedule. And they could mail or fax that OPSA 911 form to us, and we'll be glad to help. So, you know, we really encourage you to utilize our service. If your constituents have parking problems, or if your friends, family members have parking problems, we implore you, come see us before you try to dispute it on your own. We could really be, you know, a help. We're most effective when we see people before they even go to dispute the parking ticket. All right? So if you have any questions, I'll take it.
Actually, I do.
Yeah.
First of all, it's great stuff that you're doing.
Thank you.
Secondly, I mean, I don't have a car, but I know that, you know, family members have caught up in that. A long time ago, you used to be able to go in and plead your case with the judge, and they had the discretion to, like, guilty with an explanation, and then they had the discretion to you know, cut it down if they had sympathy for you. And then a few years ago, they totally disbanded that, and you either could, like, in the very front, okay, if you want to plead guilty right now, before you go in to save us time, I forget if it's 10 or 15% and you're in, or else once you go in, it's either hit or miss. Like, it leaves the mediator judge no discretion.
Right.
So you could think you're 99% right, you might think the judge might agree with you 70%, but you can't take a chance on either $0 or $150.
Right.
Is there any type of things that you guys can advocate for that type of thing back? Because once you go in, am I correct, it's still all or nothing?
Yeah, pretty much.
And that's really a terrible, like what they did was, that was really a terrible thing to do, because a lot of the judges say that they feel sympathy for you, but my hands are tied,
Right.
I can't reduce it like, guilty with an explanation.
Right, right, yeah, that, from my understanding, that's something that used to happen in the city a long time ago. And it used to happen before they had like an online avenue for people to dispute cases,
Yeah, but-
because the business centers were inundated
But one
with
thing has
people.
nothing to do with the other.
I know.
Because
I know.
you can't plead, you can't have it back and forth online,
Yeah.
and so it took away, kind of like what's happening with certain bail things, is taking away discretion from sympathetic judges.
Yeah.
So if any type of input that your office can have to see if we can get that back, because that would make the city's life easier,
Yeah.
the people, and that might make your job even more effective.
No, I agree with you 100%. It's just from my understanding of how the rule, worked.
Right.
It was a pilot program.
Right, well,
And,
yeah, but
and,
it's-
and basically they, council would have to basically reenact
They're getting more
something
money
to
that way
put
now.
it in. Yeah, to put it in.
Is that statutory?
For
That the
what,
judge can't be a judge?
well,
I mean, why do they call them judges if
Yes.
they can't judge
yes.
anything?
It's in the rules. It's in
It's,
the rules.
it's,
yeah. It's in the
well,
rules
it's
that they don't
statutory
have.
to city council, or is it a guideline from some agency?
No, I think it's from city council, because it's the rules of the city of New York. They promulgated the rules for the Parking Violations Bureau. And,
Yeah. Well, yeah,
pretty
we-
much
You
it
know about this?
tied the judge's hands as far as,
Yeah.
Yeah,
being able
we
to
should
do
take
that.
the, I'm sorry.
Cora's
I'm sorry.
there, maybe she knows something about it. You know about this? No?
We should take this up, actually, on another as an agenda item at some point, to advocate that rule or law or whatever needs to be changed again.
Revisited.
Yeah, because it's really pathetic. Also, not to mention, also, if you go in person, now you used to be able to sit there, and the judge will render his decision. Now they send you out, and you have to wait, and then the decision comes through like a clerk or something, so it's called the cowardice of the judge not actually telling you, because he knows they know everything's gonna be guilty now. So I give one particular case with me was, I had car trouble, pull over, no standing zone, construction zone, hoods up, because my check engine light came on, I'm there, the guy comes over, zaps me a ticket. So I go to tell the judge, he says, the car was unattended. And he said, well, were you sitting in the driver's seat? That's what it means. I wasn't sitting in the driver's seat. I'm there with the hood up, there's nothing I can do about it. So this is actually, it's actually ridiculous. It's just another way, like every other stupid thing, for the city to get money. It's just, and waste it, of course, I can go on about that. But the reason why I don't let judges be judges is so they can just get the money, if no one cares, and because I used to get an explanation or reduced ticket,
Right.
or if you actually had a reasonable explanation while you were there, like which should have been what I had in this particular case, or I'm sure
For sure.
hundreds of other people. So anyway, the point is, as we can does anyone disagree that this should not be an agenda item?
No, 100%.
Okay.
I agree
All right.
100%,
All
that's
right. And I
ridiculous.
said my,
I didn't even know you couldn't do it anymore.
yeah.
So what I could do is I could look, if it's a pilot program, I could look to see what the results were, if there's a report written, to see why they may have.
Because they weren't making enough money, I bet you $1 million. But anyway, but let's,
If that's agreeable, I could,
Yeah,
I have yet
but
to
we should
meet
have it as an
somebody,
agenda, yeah.
I have yet to meet anybody who doesn't want that, who doesn't want that program back, where they would want to have the ability. It was a settlement program, that's what it was called, it was a settlement program, and instead of you taking up the judge's time and taking up everybody's time, you basically, admit guilt, but you get a reduced fine, just like every other court does. It's a
Well,
little
not
give and
anymore.
go.
When
Now
you can rob a
they
bank 3 times in a
strictly-
week and they let you out without
Yeah.
bail.
That happened around
But
5
now, you park
5, 6 years
illegally,
ago, I think.
your judge can't be a judge.
Right.
Yes.
I got a ticket,
Was that during Bloomberg?
now this is funny, because this place
That
never
sounds
gives
about right.
Probably
tickets,
ended
but for about a week, they were trying this thing where they were gonna try to give
5
tickets,
or
and
6 years.
that's the week, I was parked by the hospital, like behind the hospital. And plenty of room for anybody to pass, everybody was passing. Doctor called me upstairs. My kids have a standing appointment every week at the hospital. Doctor called me upstairs. I went upstairs. This one day out of like years that they've been doing this. Every week I have to drive them there. I get this ticket. But the ticket didn't have, like, it wasn't filled, like my license plate number wasn't there. But I was going to send it in anyway, even though it was like he didn't write hard enough, so there was nothing there. But I was waiting for that paper that comes when there's like a first notice or whatever. And I didn't get that either. I still thought that I had sent it in, but I found the ticket today, because I saved it with like the pass from the hospital and all this kind of stuff. I was really going to send it in. I found it all, I'm like, oop, I never mailed this. So it's like really funny that you're here today.
Well, I'd love to take a look at it. You should know that, when it's a handwritten ticket, particularly handwritten tickets, you want to scrutinize those with a fine-tooth comb, because 7 times out of 10 there's a mistake on this.
I was like, when that paper comes, I'll just send in this hospital thing and they'll get it. And then I never got the paper, so I never did anything.
And also, they send it to the registration address, so you have to make sure that the registration address, like if you move, you'd have to change the registration address with DMV. Some people think, I changed my license address, and that's good enough. You have to change your license and your registration. Otherwise, everything ticket related is going to go to that old address, and you'll never get it.
Tell us about it.
And so, but certainly feel free to send me an email, call me, let me take a look at the ticket. I'll take a
thank
look
you.
at it for
Mariam,
Yes.
I just want to make a response to that. So probably when the time for hearing, we need you to come in. Jean. Which
Okay.
Mark.
You need Mark to testify?
I had a notarized letter from a witness too, that I was there. But still, you weren't behind the wheel, he's technically right.
But in your particular situation, you don't have to be behind the wheel.
No, that was
What you had is a disabled vehicle defense.
Yeah.
All right. What that means is that legally, what you have to establish is that your vehicle became disabled, forcing you to basically get out of traffic's way and park somewhere illegally, and you have to basically, expeditiously remove your car from there. So if it's you call the tow truck,
I just got
you
there.
call your insurance company, and then you got your car ultimately fixed. Bring in your receipts, right? When did my car break down? When did I call my tow truck? And you look at the time on the ticket. You present that, and that should be good enough.
I was able to
ticket.
rectify the problem there, so I was the
right. So then it just becomes a credibility.
so.
And that's the problem, is that 90% he would get that dismissed, but because now they changed the rules, when you go in, it's either all or nothing, and it might not be worth the risk. So, like I said, are you the boss of this, or you?
Yeah, yes.
So, like I said, when you have meetings, if you can advocate or find out, so that we can then address it in our meetings to see if we can get this changed.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, since I've been there, I've been, talking about it, because everybody wants that.
Right.
Everybody comes asking for that. So.
I suspect you'll get a resolution from us as soon so at least you'll have something to,
Some
Yeah,
support.
sure.
Some support.
I would definitely advocate for that, because I'm telling you that I don't see there's nobody in New York City that doesn't want to break when it comes to parking.
I mean, if
Lucian has a reply.
So for everybody in this room,
Yes.
and everybody that knows everybody in this room, now when you get a parking ticket, the first thing you'll do is you'll contact this office to get some idea of what a good pathway forward is, because it could be that you don't have to make that dice roll at all.
Right.
Because you'll have a really ironclad rationale for getting it dismissed.
I just wanted to find out, you said you come to Manhattan once a week? Where do you go? Where should we send people?
66 John Street.
Oh, so
On
it's
the
all
second
at
floor.
66?
Yeah, it's the business center.
Oh, that's what you mean, you go to that office?
Yeah. But like we have a headquarters where we basically deal with all the online stuff when we're not at some of the other, because we all rotate. We don't all rotate at the same time, but we all rotate. And then we go to these different locations to help people that come into the business center. So we help people live, we help people online, we help people through the mail and through the fax.
That it?
I have one other thing on that, of course. I'm sort of go to guide this, but one thing that's been happening occasionally, but more than it should, is when film permits. So the production will come and post a film permit after a certain time. So, for example, the person might have parked their car there at 11, and they don't need to be back on a Thursday, and they don't need to be back there until Monday. They know this, right? So they don't have to worry about moving the car again. The production will post their thing maybe Thursday night or Friday to shoot on the weekend. Their car inevitably will get towed, and then put to a location where they're supposed to post a notice on there, do not tow from a location, but sometimes those things fall off, or they don't do it properly, or they just don't, the ticket agents just don't care, and they get a summons when they shouldn't. Does that come up with you? How do we advocate that should?
That doesn't come up as often, because as you can imagine, that's something that's a little unique. But we have instances where, people have left their car in one location and come back, the car is gone, and because it's been moved by the NYPD or by DOT because it's something that they need that street for. What's supposed to happen is, when that happens is, they're supposed to leave some kind of flyer or something on the vehicle to let them know, usually it gets moved to a safe spot. But if it's parked illegally, they can't tow it. But you're supposed to have, warning. Now, your situation is a little unique because you parked the car legally before the notices were up.
Yes.
You left the car, for however many days, and then, subsequently a notice popped up, and then you have to move the car, but of course you weren't there. I mean, something like that is a little trickier because you got to basically explain it to the judge, and hope the judge can basically let you off the hook, for that one. Because obviously if you leave the car parked there, you could be subject to many things. Sometimes they come up with a temporary construction sign. And the temporary construction sign is going to trump every other permanent sign that's there. So if you park your car somewhere legally and 2 days later, a temporary construction sign pops up, it's the same type of scenario. Most of the time, you're not going to beat the ticket, because the temporary construction sign, it takes precedence over all the other permanent signs.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I thought I was finished, but I just read something in this thing.
Yeah.
You cannot help the client
Yeah.
if the client has not called 311. It says you cannot help us if you have not used all reasonable efforts to obtain timely relief through normal Department of Finance channels, including 311.
Oh, I think that's the old form. Yeah.
So, because that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's the old form. You can forget about that. Don't worry about it.
No, but I'm just saying that's what it says.
Including, it says including that exclusive.
Okay, so that's definitely.
Yeah, no, don't worry about
Okay.
that.
Mitch reads
we try to,
Well,
we try to make ourselves available to anybody.
No, that's
It's just,
I mean,
there are many ways for you to come to us.
that's okay.
311 is one way, call, fax, walk in.
But you don't have to call 311.
No, you don't have to.
Okay, so
No,
cross
you
that
don't
out.
have to. You can cross that.
Change it in the next
Yeah,
flyer.
yeah, definitely. Thank you for letting me know that. That's all. We amended that form. Any other questions?
Okay, so.
Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
We appreciate what you did.
The steam pipe that's making more.
Okay.
They've already agreed to fix
So
it.
do you want to just announce ticket I ever got
I talked to them, if you want to show them how that's spaced out.
Okay.
But we should let ECF.
Can help them get off.
This has so much.
Okay, now what was to be our first item is what we're going to get to.
Although this was fascinating. I don't think we have anything like this in the DC area. No.
You guys, Anna, you don't get tickets over there.
Parking summons in the DC area? They have one. Yeah, they do. I spoke to them when I first, came on board just to see what they were doing out there.
They have an
It's
office
not as
like
robust
this?
as, yeah, it's not as robust as this.
Not as robust as
Good to
his.
know.
Probably an understatement.
It's impressive. Are you ready for us?
I am, thank
Okay.
you again.
No, thank you all for inviting us. I'm Stephanie Langston, as I said before, and I recognize so many familiar faces, and it's good to see everybody. And Jamie Tapp, who's with me. I think many of you have seen me in the past with Jordy, and if you had not already heard, she moved on from the BCF. So, yes, we are still recovering from it ourselves. But she had an opportunity that fell out of the sky. And so we're very proud of her. But Jamie has been with us for many, many years, is one of our most senior attorneys, and also serves as one of our hearing officers. So I am excited that
So
she's
you've
with you
replaced
tonight.
Jordan.
No,
You
Jordy,
can't
it's your
replace Jordy.
Well, yeah, you know what I mean. I agree.
I have taken on some of her.
Where she left off.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. So, okay, so we have received a series of questions, and we're going to run through those questions. One thing that I want to make sure of before we get to the actual questions is we announced a change not that long ago that we want to make sure everyone is aware of. And that is a change to what has been referred to as our timeliness policy. So for those who have been to some of our sessions, you likely remember the first step in our process is registration, which is really quick, it's easy, it's basic. Who are you? Where do you live? How do we get in touch with you? And the rule was that you had to register within 2 years of when you found out that you had a 9/11 related condition. And so the deadline varied depending on individual circumstances and whatnot. That has now been changed, and every registration and subsequent claim will be considered timely if it is registered by July 29th of 2021, which is 2 years from the date that we were made permanent. So any claim that is in our system today is considered timely. And if you haven't registered or you know people who haven't registered, get the word out. Registration doesn't waive any legal rights. It doesn't require that you file a claim, and you don't have to be sick to register. You put your information in our system, you get a letter from us with your claim number. We will never contact you again until you file a claim. So everyone should register if they believe that they might eventually be eligible. I don't know if that's true, because I tried to do that, and it said that, since you don't have an illness, you're not in the system, and you're not, maybe I need to read the letter, but I don't have, it was really just a clear, why are you, I read it
This
as-
was a registration for the
I
Victims' Compensation Fund or for the health program?
Maybe it was the health. Right, so Yes. two very different
Yeah, the
things.
same
We're
problem with the health
related. We certainly have a lot of things, we share information, we work closely together, but the health program registration is separate, and I'm not the expert on it, but I know that for those who they categorize as survivors, you need to have symptoms
Right.
before they will actually enroll you.
If you're experiencing any kind of symptoms, you can apply for a certification at the program. They'll send you back a letter you have to complete a form, you can do it online, like why you're eligible, like were you in the zone.
Right. So I wanted to register my family, just because we were all here, but we're not sick.
But you should register with us.
Yes.
So that's the thing.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
two separate.
And
I should
so
know
we
better.
have, we have
why
cards
we're doing
here, which we're also happy to leave, with our helpline, with our helpline phone number and our website. You can register either online or even call our helpline, and they'll do it over the phone for you. And as I said, it doesn't commit you to anything in the future, but it reserves your spot, and it means that if you do end up needing to file a claim, it will be considered timely.
What if somebody had already had an illness and filed through a law firm? Are they on your radar then?
As long as the law firm registered or filed the claim, yes,
Okay,
they would
so
be in
don't
our
need to come
system.
to you directly.
No. As a matter of fact, that's a great question. If you're working with an attorney, for purposes of your VCF claim, that relationship is between the two of you, but they should be filing everything and working with us and working with you to make sure we have what we need. Of course, you are still welcome to call our helpline. Okay, so should we get into the questions? Oh,
Okay, somebody else has a question? No, okay, there's two things. One, you said that it's till 20 what?
July 29th, 2021 is to register.
Right.
We're actually open to take claims until October 1st of 2090.
Oh, correct, but to register 20, so my other thing, this is not your doing, why should, somebody like we know about it because we're on the board and, you know, but there are people that have no idea about it, that might be, have kids then, and now in 20, 30, or 40, why should there be this?
So
kind-
basically, if you were in the zone, you should register.
No,
Well,
I
but,
know
but to
that,
clarify,
but for people that don't know about it, that are not, you know, that have other things going on with their lives or whatever,
That's what they're trying to do.
right, but why is there,
Why is there a cutoff at all?
So-
why is there a
okay.
cutoff date? Because there's no cutoff for
right.
illness.
So I think this will answer your question, and if not, you'll let me know. So the statute actually requires that someone register within 2 years of the date that they find out they have a 9/11 related illness, okay? And so for many people, they had been told they had a 9/11 related illness, but they didn't realize they were even eligible for the VCF, right? And so we were running into an issue where people were missing their deadline. And they could appeal it and come in and have a hearing, and many times we got the information we needed. But with the passage of the Permanent Authorization Act, it offered an opportunity to reset that 2-year deadline.
No, I'm great.
But if you have no idea, you know, there is no illness, and it's 2030, and you go to the health program and find out for the first time that you have a 9/11 related illness, you have 2 years from that date to register
Even
and
for the
still,
victims' compensation?
with us, and
Okay,
still
so
be
that-
considered timely.
So that's.
This is a sort of, you know, it's an effort that anyone who we can reach who is potentially eligible, we want them to register. It doesn't preclude people in the future
Okay, great.
based on their
Okay, so
circumstances.
that's great, that qualifies that. Then the other thing is, and this really doesn't affect anything, I had mentioned this to Lucian before, I read the fact sheet that you sent out about the minors.
The young
And it was
adults?
just like, it was about what the parents have to do if they want to sign ready their kids, if they're under 18. Well, it's just, I guess I'm being a stickler. Anybody who was at 9/11, if they were day one, they're over 18 now. So that number 3 thing is
Almost.
removed.
So
Unless
what
they're
we.
disabled or something.
So what we are looking at, and we're going to get into that question, so I'll answer just the quick part of it, and then we can take more questions after we get into it. But there are children who were born sometime on or after September 11th, and were exposed, you know, it could go to May 30th of 2002 for our purposes. So if a child was born in May of 2002 and was exposed, they're not going to be 18 until
I was
May
worried by
of
the
this
September.
year.
Oh, that
Yeah.
clears that up.
So what we're looking at is certainly the age at the time that the claim is filed, but we recognize that there are some potential claimants out there who are still minors.
I just want to clarify what you had said about the dates. If you are not ill, you need to register by July 29th, 2021?
You don't need to.
Okay.
We recommend that you do.
Okay, so what is this deadline of July 29th, 2021 then?
So it's 2 years from the date that we were made permanent. So we were made permanent July 29th of 2019. And because of the requirement to register within 2 years, that allowed us to set a new 2-year time frame to try and get more people who are potentially eligible into the fund. But again, if you're not sick and you don't get sick, you know, or if years from now you do, you still have 2 years from that date that you realize you have a 9/11 related
So there's
condition.
no real deadline in 2000.
Well, this deadline then is if somebody was sick and they had not registered?
Correct?
Okay.
We ran
Correct.
into
And-
that a lot.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
that's the,
And what
that's
we're-
what this deadline, I just want to clarify. So if you're sick and you have not registered, and it's been more than 2 years that you've been sick, prior to this, you would not be eligible. But currently now, you are eligible as long
Correct.
as you do it by 21. If you get sick later, then that 2 years kicks in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now I
Well
understand.
said.
We still encourage you to register, or even if you're not sick.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
Also clarification, last question. So, because of this Permanent Authorization Act, from now on, no matter when I find out I'm sick because of 9/11, I can register within 2 years from the day that I'm diagnosed.
Correct, that you realize that it's typically the health program, but if another entity, it's when you first find out that your illness is related to 9/11, that someone, a government entity, tells you that. Could be SSA or workers' comp or the health program.
Because there were there a lot of decline to those people because of this timeliness issue?
It was something that was coming up quite a bit because people just didn't know that the VCF was here for them, right? A lot of what we would hear is, I thought it was only for the responders, or I didn't know that I was able to access this benefit.
Or they
you
thought
know,
the health program registration was the same.
Right.
Right.
And people don't consider themselves sick. I mean, on the positive side too, you could get bronchitis every year and not attribute it to, I'm a 9/11 survivor, but it probably has something to do with it, you know, but because of that, it doesn't apply to me.
So how does it work though if you have insurance and you're sick and you go and your insurance takes care of this? I mean, is this, because one of the things I've heard is that you know, yes, things are paid for, but is that?
Your insurance takes care of your health issues?
Like if you have, like if you find out you have something that would be related, I mean, I'm sure like lung cancer or something like that, and you have health insurance.
Okay, so that's the health program again. I just want to clarify again. That's not the VCF, that's the health program. But what would happen is,
But what does the Victims Compensation Fund do related to that, if anything? I don't know.
So what we would be looking for, so one of our eligibility requirements is that you have a condition that has been certified by the health program as 9/11 related. You can choose to get your treatment elsewhere, but we do require that you go to the health program for them to be able to certify that your condition is related to 9/11. There are a few exceptions in there, but in general, from what you're describing, you know,
I'm making a theory.
it's so in those cases where someone is being treated by their physician, they didn't realize, right, that their condition could be related. They've learned about the health program, they've learned about the VCF, and so they would go and enroll in the health program to confirm, yes, we are certifying that this condition is related to your exposure. And then whether you continue there for treatment is up to you, but that's what we are looking for, to say that there is an eligible condition that is eligible for compensation.
so for treatment, your insurance would still be taken and it would be processed. You just wouldn't be impacted because the government is basically going to pay back your insurance company for having covered you for any of the covered illnesses or medication. So if you go to the pharmacy, they are going to provide you that medication through the World Trade Center. But if you get something that's unrelated for which you're not certified, you go to the same pharmacy, they're going to charge your insurance directly. But then getting back to the VCF, after your non-economic loss claim is completed, if you want to go to the VCF to recover anything that you paid before the World Trade Center program began to pay for your medication, then you can claim that through the VCF.
So the medical expenses.
Right.
Yeah. So. Right. So, and it's not just the non-economic loss award. I mean, again, we can come back to this question maybe after we get through the others, but we do reimburse for out-of-pocket medical expenses that were paid as a result of the eligible condition, but we have certain requirements that have to be met in order to process that claim.
Thank you.
I was going to say, I believe they cover economic, there's economic and non-economic. Like economic would also include if you had any lost wages.
Exactly.
Or maybe some other related expenses. And then there's pain, non-economic, like pain and suffering.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly.
It also takes, I've been through this whole thing, and I think the hardest part for me was that the health program is either so overwhelmed or understaffed or something that I ended up having to pass more through to you than I felt like I should have to, because I should have been certified for my illness in due time. But it took them, once my illness was found by my regular doctor, I immediately called them because I had been waiting 2 years for an appointment 2 years, I had been in line waiting to have my appointment at World Trade Health. They then pushed me up because I had breast cancer, so they pushed me up and they got me in, but not for 8 weeks after I had been diagnosed. By that time, I'd had the surgery, I'd had all the visits, I had all the expensive scans, everything was already done. But the follow-up and the radiation was covered by them, but everything had to go to you. And not to them because of the fact that they couldn't schedule that appointment. That is something I've been wondering about, because it seems like, you know, the point of the program is to catch those things, and then I understood your role to be, if somebody dies of lung cancer, then the compensation comes from you in terms of a, you know, more substantial compensation for loss of life or something like that. Can you explain, like, how this is supposed to work and how it is working, and what their hopes for the future are in terms of this process?
So I can't speak to the health program, other than to say I know that they have expanded their capacity for the survivors, opening up the William Street Clinic. And again, I can only tell you what I have heard, which is that they recognized there was a backlog and they have been working to address it. From our perspective, what we tell people is, you know, the first step is to register, right? Just reserve your spot, tell us you're there. It doesn't obligate you to anything. Then go to the health program and get certified. And to your point, I you know, whatever that process is with the health program, we need that certification before you can go to the next step, which is to file your claim and have us review it.
Well, the messaging around that isn't clear. And on being on the community board, I've had more of these conversations than I would say my regular neighbors have. That's amazing that I didn't know that until this moment. I mean, the first thing they told me was go register with the World Trade Health and call them if you get sick between now and the time they see you, which I did. And then they told me to hire a lawyer. So there you go. Like, and since then I've been told, no, you don't need a lawyer at all.
Who's they, just to clarify?
World Trade Health Program. You know, they offered it as a choice, but it was certainly, they encouraged it, you know, and I want to just be honest about that.
Yeah, so we do trainings for their benefits managers and their case managers, and we can certainly take this back and make sure that they have a good understanding of the information. You know, from our perspective, we have a lot of claims from people who are still working through the health program process, right? And what we do with those claims is when it comes up in line, we review claims in, first out order, and we see that there is not a certified condition. We will send a letter essentially saying, we need you to have a certified condition before we can move forward, and let us know once the health program has certified you. And then once you let us know that, we can start our process of review and going to the health program for the information.
So it does have to be second then.
So I mean, I do, from our perspective, right, you have to have that certification. So starting with the health program makes sense. We just want you to register with us so that you don't forget to do so.
Can I just
register with
clarify?
you and then wait until you're
You can
Yeah.
register with us and never file a claim. You can register with us and file your claim 5 years later, or 2 days later, or 6 months later. It is completely individual.
It prevents the situation for, in case you miss that 2-year window down the road. If you register now, you don't just like set it and forget it, and hopefully you never need it, but.
And we have been changing. So one of the things we're focused on now that we're permanent is outreach. And really starting to think about, how do we get the word out? What organizations or entities can we start working with to try and ease the burden on claimants, right? So, I mean, if you remember, we were supposed to close, right? We were supposed to close this year, right? Take our last claims this year, and we were running out of money. And so for us, we kept the budget very slim on these things because we were going to close, right? And we wanted to get as much money out in the awards as possible. Now that we're permanent, it makes sense for us to try and set up relationships with more entities that can help verify people were there and help give us the information we need. We've always had a great data exchange with the health program. Once you're certified, we get everything we need from them directly. So, but we're trying in our outreach to look at our materials. One of the things that we've started using recently is something that's more of the step 1, step 2, step 3. And we're really looking at, making our materials easier to digest. We know there's a lot of text in them. These are all things that we're starting to look at now that we're permanent.
Well, one thing that was, I think, really successful was that town hall sort of thing that you held over at BMCC.
So that was not us.
Oh, it wasn't?
That was a
not
private
us.
law firm.
Oh, I thought they advertised that.
A lot of people made that mistake, and there's some interesting things that happened surrounding that. But yeah, that was a private law firm.
Very interesting. It was advertised as being you, at least the way I understood it.
We had absolutely nothing to do with that event.
Wow.
So,
Terrible.
and I will say, make sure if you're going to our website that you are going to the .gov website, because there are a lot of websites out there that look as if it is the VCF. You want that .gov website.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Lucian has a question.
Just in terms of partnerships with major employers within the zone, such as the city of New York being one of the largest, and the universities, private concerns. Is there anything the community board could do in terms of establishing connections between some of those in order for them to, I don't know if there's any privacy concerns on their end from sharing employee roles, but certainly they could reach out to past employees who they still have contact information for and encourage them to register for the Victim Compensation Fund.
So my answer to that is probably yes. So we've got, we have, as I mentioned, a number of initiatives that we're looking at now that we're permanent. And one of the questions we get repeatedly, and I know this is on here as well, is how do I prove I was there, right? I either lived there or I worked there or I went to school, in the zone. How do I prove that 19 years later or 18 years later? And we understand that. We really do. And
That's what the health program said. They understand it, but they still give a hassle about it.
Well, the thing is, they said provide an electricity bill or something, and I called Con Ed, and they're like, we only have records for 7 years ago, and things like that.
That's one of the reasons we wanted to have this meeting tonight, because the same thing is happening with, 18-year-olds, or, where's your mortgage statement? They didn't have a mortgage statement.
Right. So we'll touch on that, but to your question, we are starting to put together a list of what I'll call the common, either organizations or employers or entities or even some of the city or, local governments. And we're looking at, can we find a contact there who can A, help spread the information, but B, also perhaps, if we can work it out, with all the privacy rules and give us information directly when someone files a claim. Again, in an effort to try and make it easier.
Right, certainly the DOE.
Right. So the DOE is a great example. They sent out a couple months ago a letter, right, to all of these students at the schools in the zone, to the address of record as of 2001 or 2002, right? Totally get that. But that letter, if let's say the parents are still living there, right, and it went to the student at that address, that for us is a perfect document because it came from the Department of Education. It's based on their enrollment records at the time, and that is definitely a document that can be used to help support that the person was living there.
Go to the tax records and send it to everybody. Can you do that with everyone that lives in the zone? Send it to the tax records from that time
So
period?
that's the kind of question that I would say, we've done in the past, we've done some mailings, for example, to all of there was a group with pensions, so they put like a postcard in with the checks or whatnot. But those are the types of things that we're looking at, and we're open to any ideas and suggestions you have.
Well, and it was difficult because even though I owned my apartment, they gave, and I didn't get registered, but that was the thing. They were like, it doesn't matter if you owned your apartment, how can you prove that you're really there? You need a utility bill, or you need this, you need something else. I was like,
so we're going to address some of that in these questions, and I want to make sure that we answer your questions. So one more, and then.
A number of us did all these things right away back then, to sign all these things up, but now it's years later. How do we know that we did it? I mean-
Call our helpline. Call our helpline.
That's a good question.
Call our helpline and they will be able to tell you if you're registered. They'll be able to tell you if you had started a claim. Just call our
I know
helpline.
I registered, but I'm saying, we get stuff from you, like the yearly checkup and all that.
That's the health program.
DCF,
Yeah.
right, is the health register.
Or perhaps even the registry.
And-
That might
Oh,
be.
yeah.
I know I've registered for a lot of things, and now I'm saying, well, what did I register for, what did I
There's a
register for?
Yeah.
The World Trade Center
So,
registry.
if I call this, they'll let me know. if I'm
Exactly. Just call and ask. I want to see if I'm registered.
But just for VCF.
Just for
That won't
VCF.
tell you anything but
That's the
VCF.
illegal
Right.
This will tell me about VCF.
because we moved
I know
since
mental
that.
health.
My daughter was going to school down there.
So I'm not sure what happened with ones that weren't delivered, but if your daughter was in school, and actually, are you familiar with Lila Nordstrom and Sty Health? Okay, she posted something to her website, I think today or yesterday. I think it was today, with information on how to get the documentation from the Department of Education. And she's got information on who to call to get it. And if we have a certified school transcript, you're done. That's all we need to prove that the individual was there. If it's a school that was within the zone. And so what Lila has done and what she's put on her website, it's called Proof of Presence. Which document should I use? She has a section for the health program, and she has a section for the VCF. And she's got contact information as well. I think it's Sty Health.
Yeah.
Does that?
I'll send it to you guys later because I don't want to give you the wrong
Would you
thing.
rather have any old report cards?
So,
I,
yeah. So actually, school.
but that's actually what
Yeah, we're
they're
going to
gonna
talk about that. Exactly. So actually, for children at the time who were in school in the zone, that is actually one of the easier ways to prove that the person was there, that the child was there. A transcript from the school, daycare records. If they're not certified, then we just need a letter from the school or the daycare saying, yep, this is accurate. I can certify that it's correct. So that is actually one of the easiest. And my understanding is, and especially from what Lila put up here, that the Department of Education really is trying to work to help people get what they need. And the schools certainly are familiar with the requests.
How did they decide what the cutoff date was going to be? I was curious about that. Was it May 2002?
So for us, it's May 30th, 2002. That's the date the official cleanup effort ended. For the health program, for exposure purposes, they go until July 31st, 2002.
Interesting. And so how, like if someone were to come down with something that was born in August of that year or September, that was something they see a lot of in terms of September 11th related illnesses, how would you handle something like that?
So I can answer from our perspective. What we are looking at is whether or not you were in the zone, right? So south of Canal Street, river to river, at any point between September 11th and May 30th, 2002. For the health program, if someone was not there in the health program's time frame, it would be very difficult to get certified because you weren't exposed in the time frame that they have determined is required in order to say the condition is
You could have
related.
been a pregnant mother and then 9 months, and you're affected 9 months later after that time period.
Yeah.
You know,
But like, for example,
I think that
not long after 9/11, I got this thing on my face, right here under my lip. Kept going to the doctor. My doctor he did like 3-4 pathology exams because he said, you're way too dark for this kind of cancer. Made no sense.
right.
Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The latency is not that they were expecting from 9/11. So it's not part of the covered, even though skin cancer is covered. Mine isn't covered, or that instance isn't covered because of the latency. Although I know, so there will be people who will know why they got something. Why would I get a cancer all of a sudden that I'm not supposed to have, according to the doctor? You know.
Yeah, and that's all. The health program's guidelines and their
Is there any way to
rules
revisit that? Like
are on the website.
I think
We're
it would
not-
have to be.
yeah,
I think it
we're
would
not
have to
the-
be
we're
that
not
something
the
else,
health
something
program.
developed, some sort of
cluster, I mean, I know the health program, they want to help as many people as they can. No, the health program is nice people too.
They are.
So I'm sure they want to do as much as they can, but like one person, one isolated incident is not enough, but perhaps, God forbid, but at the same time, perhaps, if there were a cluster, or now more people are ending up, we're finding out that more people experience this, then with the health program, sometimes there's things they can get added. And skin cancer is already covered, so that for that one example, then if they decided the latency was now appropriate, it would be covered.
And
Then I can
it's
revisit.
actually, I'll say that's actually a really good point, because one of the benefits, so people will say to us, why do I have to go to the health program to get certified? My insurance is covering it. I have a doctor who's been treating me for, 5 years. I don't want to go to the health program. One of the best reasons to go to the health program, even if you're not seeking the treatment, is to be in their research base for exactly that purpose, right? The more data they have, they are constantly doing research. I know right now they're researching cardiac disease in 9/11 community. They are looking at autoimmune disorders. They're looking at different studies on, they're constantly doing that research, and the more data they have about the people who were exposed, the more informed that research is.
I have a question.
I just want
Oh, sorry.
to follow up on that particular point. We have the thing called the Survivor Steering Committee. You ever hear of that? And we meet every month, and we discuss different kinds of conditions that can actually be studied. So we get to initiate the process of questions that you might think are serious. So we kind of get that started in the.
And also, anything that's
Process.
added for the responders, the way that the bill is written, will be added for survivors.
And
So,
any condition that is added to the health program's list, official list, is covered as an eligible condition for compensation from the VCF.
Maybe like some of the representatives from the elected officials, it's great that they're here, because some of those gray areas where you might miss that cutoff of 2002, but, a young mother then has a kid 9 months later, so hopefully they can bring it back to.
Yeah, we've been in conversations with the health program and NIASH and what things to bring up, the conversation about what's going to get included in the STACK process. So we're in conversations about this. I sometimes go to the steering committee meetings, so we're very aware, but as things come up too, feel free to call our office and let us know.
So one more question, and then we're going to get to the questions. And then we can see if we've answered all the questions.
Okay, and this is specifically for children,
Okay.
my question. So, and I know you're going to talk about how hard it is to get them to register, and et cetera, et cetera. I think it's really necessary, once you get them to register, probably all people, but particularly the children, to send those 2 affidavits to them with the registration to prove at that time, now, as they register, to prove their residency. Because it'll be a lot easier for them now to, go to a neighbor who was there, or then, to reach out to the DOE, or as you say, Con Ed, whatever their issues are. If you don't send them those affidavit forms, they're not going to know about it until, God forbid, they have to file a claim, which could be 20 years from now, and it's going to be extraordinarily difficult for them.
Yeah, so we don't actually send out forms like that.
I know you don't, but I'm...
So, but to your point, so one of the things that we have been hearing a lot ever since we were made permanent is, how will people prove that they were there 10 years from now, right? Or 1 year from now, or 20 years from now. And we've been asked whether there's any way that we could sort of store that information. So once you register, our system has always allowed for you to upload documents to your registration. We just won't look at them until you file a claim. And so we do think, and one of the things that we're trying to get the word out about is, you should be thinking about this now if you think in the future you're going to file a claim. You should be thinking about, what documents can I get? And either store them yourself or upload it to your registration.
My 23-year-old is not going to do that.
Right.
No 23-year-old's really going to do that.
I think you have a wonderful idea.
If they get the forms, because the hardest things, right, and God forbid when my 23-year-old is 43, if she needs to file something, she's not going to really be able to,
It's for it applies to the seniors too. I'm doing it with my mother.
Right.
She's starting with this dementia.
Right.
She worked at Deutsche Bank.
Yeah.
So that's not there anymore.
through an agency called Greenleaf that's not downtown, that's not existing anymore, and she's beginning to lose her memory.
So
Now what?
So affidavits are not the preferred proof of presence, right?
Well, whatever.
So, you know, when all they have done is register, as I said, we don't, you know, our communication is around education, not requesting information, because we don't know that they're ever going to file a claim.
That's exactly right.
And so for this, I think one of the important things that this group can help spread the word about is, if you think in the future you're going to file a claim, now is the time to get that documentation and have it.
But just to reiterate, the 23-year-olds and the 25-year-olds are not going to be thinking about that. And 20, 30 years from now, they're really not going to be, if people are having a hard time now, 30 years from now, it's going to be impossible. So if you're reaching out to the children from the heart, trying to help these children protected down the road, this is part of that protection.
Would a, like Tribeca Pediatrics, who has been
That's
here
where I
for
got
that
mine from.
time, I was gonna say, that would be.
Interesting.
I just had that thought that Tribeca Pediatrics is, because Trish and I have a very young kid, I was pregnant at the time with my second one, so they're too little to be in preschool, but Tribeca Pediatrics would be, it just occurred to me, I might go to them, because they would have our records.
So one of the questions,
Just to say, they won't keep those records necessarily for 30 years.
Right.
So that's part
So
of
there is-
why
I experienced that
getting
too.
these forms out with the applications for the outreach, in particular, I'm saying to the
But
children.
they might be able to do the outreach, is what I'm saying, though, is because Tribeca Pediatrics.
Well, it's a little bit about.
So
yes.
it is an excellent point. As I've talked about, you know, expanding our outreach, it is an excellent point. And I know that, again, you know, we're trying to work with groups that reach those populations, right? Whether it be that a school is, you know, does a mailing, or
But the school
Sty
does,
Health,
and they
or.
did, but they're not going to say, and don't forget to.
Right, so
do
for
your
our
report thing."
communications, it's a really
maybe
important.
we could do that then.
Important point. And I will say also on the affidavits, one of the things, so we're also, we're revamping our website. That'll roll out in a couple of months. But one of the things that we have, that has held up a lot of claims, is when an affidavit is really the only proof of presence that's
whatever the
available.
proof is,
Well, no,
yeah.
and we don't have a sufficient affidavit, right? It's either not signed under penalty of perjury, or it says, you know, I saw the person, but I don't remember when, or,
but it
you know,
doesn't
and
have-
so what
my
we're doing,
point is whatever
but
the
I'm saying
proof
what we're
is,
doing
yes.
to help with that is we're actually working on what I'll call a template
Yeah.
for affidavits, kind of consider it sort of a questionnaire that will help get the information we need, so that if someone is doing that today, but they're not going to file their claim until 10 years from now, they will know, if they have filled it out properly, that we should have what we need and it will be sufficient, and we won't need to worry about following up to try and reach an affiant who may no longer be around. So those are also things that we're thinking about as well.
Okay.
I was told to just supply the affidavit from our neighbor who we shared a building with, because they had her proof of residency. So we filled out the affidavit, I sent it to a lawyer, and they said it was perfect and everything that was needed, and it was 18 months ago. I just got a letter from Victims' Compensation Fund this week saying we need proof of residency. Can you explain why that's happening? Like if they're signing off on it? Because that's something else that could be problematic if they're coming back that much later. For me, it's fine. I can figure something else out. But.
So I can't say about specific claims, right? I don't know what the circumstance is. So when you are claiming presence due to residence, what we are trying to establish is, number one, the address of the residence. So that's where things like the lease or a utility bill. I know, we're gonna, and we have that covered in one of our, so in that case, we'll come back to that in a minute. So we're looking for some independent document that has the address. And then we're looking for something that shows that you were physically there between September 11th and May 30th. Because many people might have a mortgage that they're subletting, or an apartment they're subletting, right? And so, in general, for residents, what we tend to get are some kind of copy of the lease, or the rental agreement or a utility bill. And then an affidavit from a neighbor saying, I know that this person was there on this date because I distinctly remember, you know, and they go into whatever the reasoning
What
is.
happens if you can't get the affidavit? Like, if I want to register now, and then I don't know any of my neighbors from 20 years ago.
So there
I just have a
are,
lease.
so there are other ways. I'm gonna let Jamie speak a little bit to some of the examples she's seen come through, but one of the things to keep in mind is we have a list on our website of documents that can support presence. It's a list, right? We have a lot of people who get very creative about, I came across a document from that time period that actually I think might help. Send it to us, right? We look at the whole claim. We're not looking for specific documents. We're looking for the information the documents
Do you
contain.
give the benefit of the doubt to the claimant, that like if things are gray, like if they have a lease but they can't definitely prove something, I would hope that they would give the benefit of the
So
doubt.
let me just say this, and, okay, so sort of, I'm gonna put in quotes, worst case scenario in a situation is your claim initially may be denied. It is not the end of the road because you have a right of appeal. And what that really means is that you have the ability to come in and have an appeal hearing, which is what I do up here all the time. And a lot of our hearings are about people trying to establish their presence. And it doesn't mean that we don't believe you, but that we just need something more on the record. And that gives you an opportunity to come in and explain your story and fill in some gray areas that, you know, may not be able to be reconciled sort of on paper. Now, there may be cases, and we see it where, you know, people like Stephanie said are creative in terms of if you kind of take yourself out of it, right? And you look and say, here are some things that don't, you know, there may be some holes or, you know, you can try. I will give you an example of a hearing I had not that long ago where the child had been in school somewhere downtown. I think she was disabled. And they didn't have any records, but she had a journal. The mother had a journal, a diary from that time period, where she was making entries in there whenever she or her husband would go and meet with the para, and it was all through that time period. So that's like an example of something that's creative.
You know, some of you have probably who have been at some of our presentations have heard me say the denial is a door opening.
Yes.
Right? It's not, as Jamie said, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the road. It's a door opening for you to come and talk to us. You sit across from somebody like Jamie. It's very informal. There's a court reporter because all of the information goes back to the special master to render a decision. But it's a chance to come in and just tell your story, answer some questions, and help us get to a point where we say, yes, I believe that this person was there, and put it into the record.
Is there any room or potential for you guys to get the information that was provided to the health program for eligibility and proof of presence?
So,
No.
yeah, I mean, it gets into, so I will say this. As I mentioned, we have a really good working relationship with the health program. Now that we are permanent, one of the things that we have put on our sort of list for discussion with them is whether there is a way to share more than just the certified condition. But of course, you know, they're bound by HIPAA guidelines. There's a lot of privacy stuff mixed in there. So I'm not going to say that the fact that it's on the list means it's easy.
Right.
But we also recognize that a lot of times it's the same, many people are using the same documents. And so we always say keep a copy of whatever you submit to the health program.
Yes, yes.
Because that same information, the same document may be able to be useful for us.
I do want to, sorry, can I say one more thing? I do want to reiterate what I just said and tell the people that you know, which is if you get a denial, it is not a statement that we don't believe you. I mean, I think that's number one, because I could imagine you were there, your child was there, and you get this letter and you think, they don't believe me. That is not at all what that is. As Stephanie said, we just can't get there on paper, and we just need you or your child to come in and talk to us about it so that we can get it on the record. And then that serves, I mean, I don't want to say that in every case that will suffice, but generally speaking, that's what we
And
need
that's
to
explained
do.
in the denial letter to the family, so they don't just say, the hell with it?
It's absolutely explained.
Yeah.
And so I'll mention, so one of the first question that Lucien had sent to us was about proof of presence and our letters where we're asking for things like proof of employment or workers' compensation paperwork, which clearly wouldn't apply to a number of people. So I want to start by saying that we are, thanks to actually the Survivor Steering Committee, I think, was one of the first to say, can you take a look at your letters and work to make them a little more understandable? And so that is actually another effort that is underway. We have a team that's focused on that, making sure that the letter makes sense in the context of the claim. We try to do that, but we do have some templates we use and some standard text, and we want to make it more customized. So when it comes to presence, if we don't have what we need when we do our first review, then we're going to send a letter explaining the deficiency. So you submitted an affidavit from Joe Smith, it wasn't signed. Or you submitted a document that didn't have the dates on it of when you were there, right? Or you submitted something from your employer and they could verify you were employed, but they couldn't tell us where your office was located, right? So the letters should explain, and of course, if they don't, you should call our helpline, but our goal is to have the letters explain the reasons so that you can try to get us what we need, and that will allow us to move the claim forward. So I think on this first question about substitute proofs, we've talked about a number of them. Keep in mind our end goal. Our end goal is to have some type of document that supports the answers in your claim form, right? So if in your claim form you say, I lived at this address during this time frame, I was a resident in the area, we're looking for something that helps to support that. Some document, independent source that can confirm that for us.
Could you read the questions out?
Oh, sure, I'm sorry. So the first question is, the proof of presence form letter asks for proof of employment or workers' compensation paperwork from people whose ages span between conception and adulthood. What substitutes proof can be required in place of these documents which are not compatible with youth? So we've talked about the school records, the daycare records. So let's go back to the residence. The lease, the rental is not in the child's name, right? So in those instances, what we need is a letter saying, the lease is in my parents' name, right?
A letter from whom?
A letter from so first of all, from if the claimant is an adult,
Yes.
right? So from the claimant explaining, this is where I lived,
Yeah.
but obviously it was in my parents' name.
Right.
Tax returns, right? So let's say you have your tax returns from 2000, 2001, 2002, and your child is listed as a dependent on those tax returns at that address.
You don't have to have them.
But if you have them.
I'm saying if. I'm
mean-
saying that's another example of something, right? Because
Right.
if a child under the age of 16 is listed on tax returns as a dependent, and your tax returns have the address in the zone, that's very helpful to us,
Does
right?
the tax authority have that
But legally,
forever?
after 7 years,
I mean,
most
does the-
people tend to
Yeah,
get
most
rid of
people
them.
get rid of
Does the-
theirs.
Does the IRS
Especially
maintain those
30
Does
records?
the IRS have it?
Yeah.
The IRS has transcripts of taxes, I don't know for how long.
So again, these are just examples,
I know,
right?
we're not trying to be obnoxious.
So Hannah is saying they can find out about that. I'm using these as examples,
Yeah,
right?
and I just want-
Okay.
Okay, yeah, if we could get state tax.
Yeah.
So-
City.
Take your tax.
Right.
So from,
It's easy.
as I'll read from Lila's document, where she talks about the official school transcript or daycare record, et cetera, the affidavits, which we've spoken about. It could be from former classmates, it could be from teachers or administrators. And then for residents, and she got this information from us, you know, we've talked about rent, mortgage receipts, utility bills, tax documents, FEMA documents. If the document is in someone else's name, such as a parent, then we need a letter. It can be from the adult child or it can be from the parent explaining that, that discrepancy, so to speak. And so it may not be enough alone, right? But with an affidavit, that can be helpful. It really depends on the circumstances of the claim, right? And the individual nature and what's available to that person.
Okay, I just want, once again, we're talking about the children here, just the children right now, not us. 30 years from now, I'm not gonna be here, okay? The tax documents are not gonna be saved. Hopefully the DOE will still have records. She's not gonna be, my neighbors are gonna have passed away. She's not gonna be able to get affidavits. Or really anything besides possibly a transcript, and if they were in nursery school, not that, but probably, you know, at most a DOE transcript. So just trying to be real.
Get it now. Get it now. And spread that message.
So there needs to be some sort of messaging.
And spread that
We need to do
message.
something
Let's talk
to people.
about,
Yeah.
keep in mind that the residents and the survivors who were, you know, we don't have unions, we don't have these organizations, we don't have pensions, these kids don't have any of those things. Plus, the residents and the kids and the survivors really were treated sort of as second-class citizens. And that's one of the reasons we don't know about it. We don't go to Washington because you don't want to show, you know, the residents.
It's a great reminder for our messaging, absolutely.
So are the volunteer first responders were always, as if they didn't exist, which I was one, so we had to fight for that.
Let's just talk about the kids. If we can just focus right now on the kids and what's going to happen 30 years down the road, because these decisions now.
I think she answered it.
Yeah.
I don't know, beat a dead horse.
But from a policy perspective, I think it's worthwhile for the board to express to city agencies that may hold records that can be used as proof of presence to maintain them for longer than the archival guidelines currently.
Or to send out some sort of notification before you destroy it.
It could
That
be
might help.
destroyed in 20 years or 15 years. Rather, they should hold on to the same permanency as 2090. That way, it's available should someone need them,
You know,
just in case.
For some people, another example I've heard for some people, if they are required each year to file a form with the housing authority, if they have copies of that form or can get it from the housing authority. You know, if there are, for subsidized, I think, housing, you know, so again,
So I
and.
think 30 years from now,
and-
kids who lived in housing that had subsidies are not going to.
Yeah, we say DHCR. We'll talk to.
So.
Yes.
So let me, so on this first question about proof of presence, I think we've talked about the school the residents, all of those, the possibility again of tax returns, you know, really giving thought to what might I have that as part of the whole package, right, as part of the puzzle, can help to show I was where I said I was during the time.
And just to answer Wendy's question from before with regard to the doctor, I did exactly that.
So
I went to him. Michelle was in the room when my children were delivered. You know, so who
that
better to?
is another.
I got it
Let me.
from him.
So actually,
Let me follow on with one thing that happened to me. What happened was I had been in the health program for a decade, and then I sent something to VCF, and I got a denial from him, and I went, how could that even be possible? But as a communications problem, it should have said, even though you're on the health program, we still have to do a separate thing. And then they rejected the things that had been acceptable to the health program. So I had to start over, and I went, how could this happen? I lived there, I lost a best friend, all these things. So there should be some communication that my assumption that since I was in one program, I'm not in both programs, and so I don't really have a sense of that. And
that was
so,
part of the sort of motive or thinking behind the timeliness policy, because we recognize that a lot of people, or I mean, a fair number of people believed erroneously, but understandably, that you were registered in one
But just to address, so there are a few reasons why, so let me back up and first say that my understanding, and again, I don't know the documents that the health program will take, but there are some different standards in what we're looking for, right? And so there are reasons that you could be eligible for the health program and not eligible for compensation with the VCF. One is if you were in the zone for exposure purposes between June 1st and July 31st, that you weren't there during our time frame.
The zone is different too, isn't it?
And
It's
this,
a
I was going to
different
say, the
boundary.
second thing is if you were north of Canal, so if you were between Houston and Canal for your exposure, but never went south of Canal, our zone is south of Canal. So there are some varying eligibility criteria that could have you eligible for the health program and not for us.
They just
And
protected the
vice versa.
documentation, but it doesn't
And
matter.
so, but your point is a good one that, you know, it is important for us to be thinking about
How to
people,
express
how to
that there's two
explain
different
that.
things.
Right, that is very helpful feedback.
So how about if you have a child, I had a child that wasn't quite one, and then I had a baby after September 11th because I was pregnant. You know, if both of their birth certificates have my home address, and it's the same home address, is that?
That's a pretty good one.
It wasn't enough, was not enough in my case.
Well, it depends
That's what I'm
on,
saying, like, if that hasn't changed, and that's my only address, and, you know, I don't have any other family that lives in the tri-state area, you know, that, I mean, would that be enough if I don't have my tax form? Because,
But will that be enough in 30 years?
Submit it, and then we'll see.
It may,
And we'll let you know if you need to get
but
something
it did not,
else.
it was not
Well,
enough in
but-
my case.
but-
My daughter was born in October at New York Downtown Hospital on Gold Street, which is also in the zone. It was not enough.
Remember, you're dealing with the government, so
so
no offense,
I
but
also
common sense sometimes does not factor in.
And don't, I also don't want to confuse it, there are other reasons why we may request copies of a birth certificate. So for example, if the claim is for a minor child and we're trying to protect that child by confirming that the parent is the legal person who can file the claim, then that's another place where we would actually request a birth certificate.
But, and actually, the younger one, I was pregnant at the time, so we enrolled in there was, I think it was, there was a health study for pregnant mothers, so I'm assuming that would maybe be proof that, you know, I mean, she was part of this, it was through, I think it was through Mount Sinai.
So just to be clear, the health program and
No, no, it
and then
was
the
a separate
no, but
study.
I want to be clear about in utero exposure.
Right.
So the health program, as I understand it, does not cover individuals whose only exposure was in utero. So what they are looking for is that the baby was born and exposed.
That's
That's not, and I'm just, that's.
But that would
health
apply
program.
to you because you
So-
live within the zone.
So,
But it's fine, because I live in the zone.
Right.
She was born in the zone, and she's born before this deadline.
so then, but that's, just to be clear, so when the health program is looking to certify the condition, so let me keep going with the questions here.
I just want to ask this question about exploring other proof of residencies. What if my kid was going to a sports camp or something outside, and I could get the coach to say, well, you know, John Curtis lived at such and such, he was a member of my facility and so forth and so on, or your synagogue or your church or something that's out of the district, but you were a member there and you used to go, and you go there, would that be something that would be acceptable as proof of residency?
So depending on the document, it may be that what we would need is an affidavit from
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
someone
the coach,
right,
The rabbi,
right.
Monsignor.
That could be a proof of
whoever
presence.
is in
If it's got the
charge,
right
yeah.
information, that could be a proof of presence.
We're only up to question 2.
Okay. Actually, I think we've already answered. Could other such documents be requested, such as proof of parentage? These are more presence related, and I think we've answered. So the question
Okay.
is, could other such documents be requested in the initial form letter, such as proof of parentage or proof of custody? So we only need proof of parentage or proof of custody if the claim is being filed for someone under the age of 18. Otherwise, they are an adult once they reach the age of 18. So I'm not sure if there was
It
more
may
to
have been a
this
glitch, but I was
question.
also asked for proof of custody of my 21-year-old.
So I think that was a mistake.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk about our new process there.
Okay.
That was a gap that I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that because what happened there is, well, I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
I'm going to come back to that.
If custody though showed, if a person, let's say I'm person one, and I've proven that I lived within the zone, and I had custody of a child, that should be enough to
The
prove that
custody
child.
document, if you have the court document granting custody,
Yeah,
and it's got the address
Or
in the
parentage,
zone,
yeah.
or parentage, yes, absolutely.
so that would be good
Absolutely.
presence for the, okay.
Yep. Okay, number 3. This is getting to your question. As most youth were too young to have any memory of what proof might be available, we can assume those who have living parents or guardians may avail themselves of that support. I have a 21-year-old daughter myself. She doesn't fill out anything on her own. To that extent, is there a way to avoid a secondary line of questioning that requires burdensome legal machinations on the part of the young victim, such as signing away authority as authorized representative to a parent or guardian because the material is too confusing for someone who has the possibility of a parent or guardian to work on this on their behalf? So I'm going to push back a little bit on the legal machinations part. So we have a number of claims that were filed. So when you file a claim, when you start the claim form, right, you identify whether or not you are the person who is sick or whether you're filing on behalf of someone who's sick. And there is an option to file as the parent or guardian of a minor child. And when you select that in our system doesn't then do a check of the child's birth date to say, oh, no, that child's an adult already. It accepts at face value that you are putting forth the claim as the parent of a minor child. We recognized, and actually it was based on one of your questions at I think it was the September Survivor Steering Committee, where the little light bulb went off and said, why are we asking you for proof of parent for an adult child, right? And so that made us go back and look, and what we found is we had a number of claims in our system where the child, I don't want to use the word victim. The child was a child at the time the claim was filed, but has since reached the age of 18. And we had a number of claims where the child was over the age of 18 when it was filed, but the parent filed it for them. So we've been going through those claims to make sure, from a legal perspective, once the child is 18, they are an adult, and we require that the claim be in their name. And we need them to sign for us the signature page that allows us to go to places like the health program. We need them to sign the different forms and exhibits. But we also recognize that many of these young adults want their parents helping them. And so what the child can do is call our helpline or send us a letter that says, I want my parent to have access to my claim and be an authorized contact. And we have a way to do that, including if the child says, I want my parent to have online access to my claim so they can do it all for me, we can do that as well. We just need the adult child's approval to do that, right? It's to protect them,
do it by phone.
right? You can call our helpline, absolutely. So what we've been doing with these claims is going through them, and we're sending letters to the adult child and to the parent, letting them know that we are we're putting the claim in the adult child's name, and we tell them exactly what they need to do to get their parent access. And then we're sending a letter to the parent so that they know what's going on with the claim. In your case, we made a mistake because we didn't recognize that your child was already over the age of 18. We shouldn't have been asking you for that birth certificate because we should have recognized that the claim needed to be in the child's name. And rather than being the legal representative as the parent, what we call you is you're an authorized contact. And you can do as much as your child wants you to do, you can still have online access, but we have to get that claim legally sort of organized in the right way to protect the child.
I still have one problem in that area that you may have addressed on your end, but the lawyer was unfamiliar. They were like, oh my God, we never had this before. So I have not filed any economic loss claims. However, I did furnish the attorney when we retained them with like a stack this big of, that I got from the pharmacy. So it was like years and years and years of pharmacy records. The insurance was mine. The co-payment was paid by me. It is not my children's money. It is mine. It's on their thing.
So I'm going to tell you, so you're talking about reimbursement for out-of-pocket medical expenses
All
that
those
you paid
co-payments.
on their behalf. So I'm going to give you the answer that I think we have given each time this has come up. So we don't know. So what the special master has said on that topic is, until we see a claim that has that, it's a difficult theoretical to answer. So it needs to come to us as a claim. I want to claim reimbursement for the out-of-pocket medical expenses that I paid when my child was a minor because of their 9/11 related condition. It's helpful to us to see those so that we can understand kind of the fact pattern and understand what it looks like, because we haven't had one of those claims come in yet. And so it's hard to say how RUPA will decide to handle those.
And those will be difficult to furnish too, because since it's required that you wait until after the non-economic loss claim is done, so by the time you're doing this, I mean, we're already so far out that I don't have every single receipt. I'm sure nobody does, of all the co-payments. Some of the doctors, some of the doctors have destroyed the records. I didn't know I needed to ask them for them before. They were like, oh, your kids turned 18, we got rid of it. They didn't tell me at the time. They told me when I went to them to ask them for it. So, I don't know from where people will get that proof. That's going to be a whole other new thing that comes unless we can preempt it somehow.
And just to explain with what's been referenced about you have to wait to get your award. So to reimburse for out-of-pocket medical expenses, we need to see receipts, explanations of benefits. We need something that shows that you paid it and it wasn't reimbursed, and that it was for the eligible condition. So what we found is when we had claims for medical expenses, they took a lot of time to result in a very small amount, like a couple $100 of eligible expenses, and it held up the review of the larger claim. So back in 2017, I think, we made a change to say you can still be compensated for those, but we won't look at it until you bring it back as an amendment. Let us get your award out first and get you the bulk of your claim before we spend the time to sift through and look at it. So the goal there was one that was entirely focused on not holding up claims and getting the bulk of the award out as quickly as possible.
That makes sense.
So you can come back once you get your award and file a claim for reimbursement of those medical expenses, and we will absolutely pick it up and look at it. We do have a policy that the out-of-pocket costs be $5,000 or more, but we will make exceptions to that. And again, this is to try and balance that, we're trying to get the claims through faster. So if you have medical expenses out of pocket that were less than $5,000, you can still come to us and ask that we consider them.
I just don't know how I'm going to prove there was more.
That is a,
but
yeah,
but I definitely have.
yeah.
I had to take all 3 kids to the doctor every single month.
So on the proof of parentage and all of that, so as I mentioned, we are working to sort of get these claims sorted out, make sure that they're in the adult child's name, make sure that everyone understands what we're doing. We are not, if you had filed it with a law firm, we're not removing the law firm unless the adult child or the law firm tells us to. So they're still going to get correspondence. They're still going to have access to the claim. The claim is still going to move forward. But we want to make sure that the adult child has authorized us to be speaking with their parent. It's to protect them. All right.
Can I just ask for one clarification, just, for children filing, just registering, right, with the VCF? And if they can get their proof in early, which we know is a good thing, will the VCF tell them early that this is good enough proof for down the road?
So we won't. We really won't look at it until the claim is filed.
So getting it in
So,
may not.
so my suggestion there would be make sure, let's take the example of the affidavits, right?
Yeah.
So make sure that it meets our requirements, right? They're laid out on our website, very specific. And as I mentioned, we're going to be coming out with this sort of affidavit kind of questionnaire. If it is complete and it's signed under penalty of perjury, then it should be sufficient.
The more detail, the better.
Okay,
Always.
if, like, let's say her child came, couldn't she, just as a courtesy, saying, listen, I have this, will this be okay 40 years from now, so I can just put it away, instead of waiting 40 years to say, I'm pretty sure it's okay? I mean, it just seems like, you guys are doing wonderful work, but you're putting these people through hoops, where just a simple courtesy could cut through all the red tape.
What we're talking about really are the children in the future.
Right. And we, again, we are really thinking about the permanency, right? Because what will people do 20 years from now or 30 years from now? But we're also balancing that with the claims that we have in our system that are ready for review, that we want to review and get the awards out. Our helpline is a great resource to call and say, can I run you through what I've got in this document?
That's what I'm
Does that sound like it will be sufficient,
That's all.
Certainly. And then again, there's information on our website. We have a policies and procedures document. There's a whole section on presence. And it lays out what it is we're looking for and what it is we need. And again, it's got a list of documents in there, but think about the end goal. What do I have? What can I get that shows that I was there during the time frame?
And your hint that you could upload that in your system.
Absolutely, and it'll save it.
It's helpful.
It'll save it,
And
absolutely.
that way you don't have to try and have it in a file cabinet somewhere.
Yeah.
What about
The fact
pho-
that
you accept
it's
pho-
a plus.
do you
The
accept
fact that
photo-
you won't know if it's good enough.
Do you accept
Yeah, but you
photographs?
can ask though.
So the question is, do we accept photographs? So
It's as close as you
a
can get.
photograph alone is generally not sufficient, and I'll tell you why. Most of the photographs we get are of people who were responders, volunteers at the site, who are in masks, hard hats. It's impossible to tell who's actually in the photo. It helps if there is a caption or something in the article listing names, but it is not sufficient in and of itself because
But if you can tell
we
who it
can't
is
tell.
is it a?
So if it is a clear photo, and then we have, let's say, this question came up not that long ago, let's say we have a copy of the person's driver's license, and it's clear it is the same person, that could be very compelling. And I'm going to look to Jamie again to add any.
It depends on the photo.
Right,
It depends on where the person is, and
My
you can tell
photo,
the
I'm on
date.
the rubble pile.
Okay, so in
And
that
you can tell,
situation,
and you know it's me.
it might be helpful. Where, in my experience, what typically happens, it's often found to be corroborative, particularly during a hearing, but not. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't submit it in the first instance, and it's really
It depends.
It depends, but. I was in a hearing where a man brought, his story was amazing, but he brought in his whole photo book and the negatives, where the dates were clearly, it was very clear. Sometimes it's difficult to get the clarity in a photo and a copy that we can't see it,
The
and you don't want to
landscape
be
is,
sending in originals.
Is unique.
Yeah. So it really depends.
Is coming to see you or anybody during this process, does that always equate to a hearing, or do you guys just have like somebody who's in the middle of the
helpline.
application and okay?
The helpline. And I will say, our helpline really sees themselves as your advocate. I know I've said before, many of you have heard me say, they will, if you prefer to set up an appointment to talk with them to get help with your claim, they'll do that. They'll call, we do a lot of proactive outreach. If we send a missing information letter and you're not represented by an attorney, we'll call to make sure you understand the letter. So they are there to be your advocate, and you should use them for those things. I will say to one of the comments earlier, you know, you are correct that most government programs try to put up as many hurdles as possible.
No.
No, we don't take offense.
Okay.
One of the things that we really pride ourselves on is we are really looking for every reason to find somebody eligible and pay the claim.
Well, if
We
anybody can
really
say it,
are.
it's you.
We
He's a
really are.
serviceman.
Our team is so focused on our mission. And they are so focused on figuring out when they pick up a claim, what can I do to help make this claim, help to perfect the claim, right? What is it that I need? Does the person understand that? That we are probably the only government program that, with, of course, always sensitive and checking for fraud, but we are here to try and get compensation to people who
I rescind my previous.
who should.
For the record.
So like I
Noted.
said, just remember,
And
the
apology.
possible, you know, the quote unquote, you may have to come in for a hearing, but don't take that as, you know, an indication that your claim isn't gonna go anywhere.
And you
at all.
don't, and if you're not working with an attorney, you don't need an attorney for your hearing. Again,
Actually, that's a
it's
good
a
question.
conversation,
In terms
it's a
of-
conversation.
Seems like, I mean, I don't, maybe, I was gonna say, it sounds like it's not difficult, so maybe attorney isn't needed all the time, or?
So
I don't think it's needed at all,
You
unless
do
it's my
not
opinion.
need an attorney to file a claim with the VCF. Many people prefer to work with an attorney because they don't want to deal with the claim form, or everybody has their own decision to make. But you do not need an attorney to file a claim with the VCF. And if you're not working with an attorney, our helpline will even set up an appointment. You sit in front of your computer, they sit in front of theirs, and they'll walk you through every field of the claim form.
It may depend on the attorney, but I have an attorney, and I'm still having to look for all these documents the same way you are, you know, potentially without an attorney, so like, what's the difference? They don't do anything for you, you still have to do it.
If you do decide to work with an attorney, and many of our claims are represented, please recognize they are limited by law to 10% as a fee. They cannot take more than 10% of your award as a fee. So just keep that in mind. And again, it's a personal decision, but know that. Okay. I think, so we're going to answer this question. This is the one that could something be created to allow physicians who are in possession of health records to verify that they were within the same household as a leaseholder or property owner that is in possession of proof of presence documents that are currently accepted as sufficient? So our question on this back was, we're not sure we understand the scenario, but I think from the conversation, we're talking about medical records.
Right, medical records.
Medical
Or you have a
records,
baby
okay.
And you don't have a school, you don't
Right.
have anything else.
So medical records from a physician could be used as a proof. They would need to show that the child was cared for on a certain date, right? And if we're saying that the doctor's office is in the zone, then it needs to show the location where that visit took place.
What about if the parent just proves they were living there? The baby's born, like, you know,
Well, that would be, so the residence, I mean, that would be going back to the residence, but if you're looking to use, for example, records from a pediatrician, then that could be helpful, that could be a helpful document. Again, it needs to contain the right information.
Okay.
So
The
I-
pediatrician doesn't have to be in the zone, though, just the child has to live in the zone.
Correct, so
But the
if,
pediatrician is in the zone,
if
then
the
that's another
pediatrician
reason
is
why
in the
you were in
zone,
the
that's
zone.
another example, right? Because they had an office visit on, such and such a date at a doctor's office that was in the zone. That, for us, is very compelling, right?
So the reason that you have all these standards is to fight fraud. So my question is, how often do you experience fraud? Is it actually a big problem with this? Are there a lot of people trying to make claims that are false ones? And
So I will say that we do not have any instance of fraud in a paid claim. We have a number of claims that we have referred to the Office of Inspector General for additional review.
Okay.
So it's not that uncommon.
I would just say that we look for certain things. And the best thing for us is to have sort of independent, third-party documents. In particular, if they come directly to us, like from an employer or from a physician's practice, right?
FEMA, because some of us put in
Mhm.
FEMA claims,
Yep,
but I don't
FEMA
have any-
documents
but I
could
don't have
be-
any of that anymore. Would FEMA's government, couldn't government talk to government? I mean, could they tell you?
So FEMA is one of the entities on our list of, does it make sense to set up a data exchange? But keep in mind, setting up something like that takes time, and there are the privacy concerns. Like, we can't go to FEMA as a government entity and say, we have a claim, right? I mean, we would essentially be giving.
Did you get the FEMA letter about being hacked, that they were hacked? FEMA was-
So-
I got that letter.
Hannah?
I guess that should
All our
prove.
office too, because FEMA's a federal agency, so talk to us. You would know how to get, well, because our caseworkers at every federal agency, there's a congressional liaison, so you would sign a privacy waiver that we could advocate on your behalf to inquire about a certain thing at different agencies. I don't know our relationship with FEMA, we mostly do work vis-a-vis resiliency, but that is something that our caseworkers, A, I'm gonna alert them, but B, that's something that we can explore. And that's
I would
why.
imagine that would be good for a lot of people.
But that's the same thing with like IRS, why.
Well, not FEMA, but what?
I didn't
know
get
it-
anything from
You know,
FEMA.
it wasn't, it's not FEMA, it was the Red Cross.
Yes.
We had a-
So we
But you had to sign up with FEMA to
we
get
still-
the Red
we
Cross
have
stuff.
a relationship with that agency vis-a-vis federal
You did.
agencies, so that's why like we can inquire with the IRS,
Mhm.
because, so I will check in with our caseworkers and loop back with Mariana and we'll figure out what.
Yeah, I think it was the Red Cross, wasn't it? What was it?
They just, the Red Cross gave us groceries.
Yeah, well, that was the thing, there was, in an air filter.
Yes.
That was,
and
I was
a
very
HEPA
grateful
filter.
for the air filter.
What is the procedure for the appeal? Like, from the time, okay, now my document is denied, I'm saying I want to appeal because I need to talk to you about correcting it. How long does that take?
So you have 30 days to submit the request, and after that, you have another 30 days to get us your sort of appeal package, which explains all your arguments that you're making and documentation, if you have it, or your affidavits or whatever. It's reviewed, and then your hearing will be scheduled, and
Lucian said your thing is resolved, but
then you come in for your hearing.
Can you request an extension if you need it?
You can't, we have the 30-day window to request the appeal, that's pretty solid. I mean, you can
Well,
submit
that's in
the
our, that's required by
Right.
the statute.
You can submit the request, and also, you have that additional 30 days to get your explanation in. In terms of when the hearing is scheduled, that you have some leeway.
So then
work
you
with
can
you on
present
that.
additional.
So
at the
let me
hearing.
also.
you have something to add, Cora?
I want to add to the medical records, not to this VCF claim in particular, but I was told if possible, by all means, medical record meaning if your doctor or healthcare practitioners actually has already had in the electronic health record, say from the hospital, it's from the hospital's record they press the button, not a doctor putting on their letterhead, I'm writing like Dr. Fong certified, blah, blah, blah. So that was just anyone can pull a letterhead to write something. But if you actually can get something from the record, the electronic health record, they pull up that record and print it out, so they have all these, the like internet search, the time and day. So that is more, it's a stronger evidence. So I just want to, so are they the same or is actually acceptable? Just a doctor's office letterhead, license number 2345667.
So it would be again, we'd be looking at the claim as a whole, and that could be a great proof of presence. It depends on the document, right? It depends on what it has. It depends on whether it, comes to us from you versus if you ask the physician to mail it to us directly, which they can do. It depends. Anything
Oh,
that
so if the
is,
physician mails it to you,
Which is
that's
better?
that is,
because
it's always
stronger?
better if we get it straight from the source.
Okay, so
Because we will have a copy of the envelope and we'll know that it came from them directly.
And contemporaneous records
Are
from
always
that time are the
better.
best.
So let me also, to your question about the timing, if you submit your claim and we send you a letter requesting additional proof of presence, and you know you have tried everything possible and you just don't have it, call us and let us know that you would like us to go ahead and deny the claim, right? Like, tell us, I have nothing else I can give you. So let us know that so that we can move the claim forward and deny it and get you to that hearing. You can let us know, I've tried everything, I've looked everywhere, I don't have anything.
Then why do you have to deny it? Why can't you, like...
It triggers the appeal,
It
right?
triggers-
I know that, but it's approaching you from a negative thing. Why can't you just, like, you know...
Sounds like it's just the
Yeah,
system.
yeah, like, instead of going through that extra hoop, like, take it from...
you just said that they make you go, they always.
So we're always gonna look at what you submit, and we're going to figure out if we can get past that hurdle, right? And then we're gonna try to work with you, right? It's not, again, it's not meant to be a burdensome.
Adversarial or anything.
If we can get the information at that stage, your claim moves faster. If we need to wait for a hearing, then that's additional time, and our goal is always to keep the claim
Can I ask
moving.
you, I think it's like, it's basically like a civil case, like, when you rule on these things, and you don't have to say exactly, you're looking, it's more likely than not that you believe the claimant, is that kind of like, where, in just general terms, the burden of proof is kind of more like that than...
Well, the other things, I'm sure that you
Well,
can talk to people.
Can you answer that?
So if the question is, so what we're
It's like
looking
more
at.
likely than not, because sometimes you never
Right,
get
so what we're
definite
looking at a hearing is credibility, right? And that's why the conversation is so important. What we're looking at in the documents is, is it consistent, let's say, with what's in the claim form? Is it consistent with, let's take the example of an employer. Is it consistent with what we know about this employer and where they had offices at the time, right? We're looking at it in the whole, and we're trying to get to the point where we believe that the documents that we're looking at are sufficient to support presence.
like quick things that I made notes from before when you said, well, Bob was talking about the health fund and what, that you might be eligible for the health thing, but not for this. If you're sick enough to be eligible for the health fund, why is your program more stringent? I would, just as a layman, I would think unfortunately, if you qualify for that, why?
So our geographic zones are different, right? And our timeframes are different.
But if you've been, well, that might be a problem, because if it was determined that you were sick because of 9/11, then the zone, all that other stuff should be not.
So all I can say is that the two programs operate under different statutes and regulations, and
Then the third thing, if we did, and the last thing, obviously everybody knows the health of the mother affects that's, so the in utero thing, that just seems to be.
that's for the health program. Because remember, we're not doctors,
Okay.
right?
But you
What
can-
we're looking at is that the individual has a certified condition.
Right.
That's all on the health
In
program.
utero is covered. In utero is not covered if you were pregnant in March of 2000. I mean, what is it? May of 2002, and that means the child's only exposure was through you. They weren't exposed in the zone. Those are who weren't covered. But if you were a child that was in utero in 2001, like Wendy's or my own, those are covered.
Right, but I'm saying a child that was.
Because the child was born.
Because they were born and they were
before,
alive
right up to-
in the zone
Yeah,
during the
yeah.
period.
I'm just questioning that, because medically that's just wrong.
Right.
In your,
Even though the sand.
communications development.
Was still there.
If you
Was contaminated.
make recommendations to people,
Afterwards.
you might want to, based on this
That's what I-
conversation,
I have
tell
that.
parents to make
They came to my house in
time
2002.
capsule
Mm.
for their
I
kids,
failed to clean
That's a good idea, that's a good way to put it.
so that, that's what I'm getting out of this. It's like you need to, you know,
Yeah.
look someplace to store that information so that the kids 30 years from now
Right.
can have access to it.
Agree, and informing.
And then but letting, yes.
Yes,
Letting them know
informing,
now.
yes,
Yeah,
definitely,
People that they
definitely.
need to-
Okay,
Yeah.
question 5, I think we've already talked about this. Are there any other forms of proof or identification that have not been mentioned here but are being considered by the VCF as it confronts the issues around young survivors? So we've
And
talked about.
Asked and answered.
Asked and answered, and if you
Question
have
6.
ideas, let us know. If there's a document that comes to mind that you think are an entity, let us know. What steps can be taken by the community board and by the community at large to broaden the conversation around this issue? So first and foremost, help us get accurate information out. Please, make sure people are going to our website, that they're calling our helpline, get the information out. This conversation, you know, making sure that people are thinking about gathering that evidence now, right? Even if they don't plan to use it until the future, gather it now. And, you know, make sure, please, that people know that they should register, right? Even if they're not sick, go ahead and register. I do think down the road, there could be an opportunity for you to help us, as we talked about before, identify points of contact in some of these entities. You know, to the comment earlier, we have a lot of contacts at places like the unions, but we don't have a lot of contacts at some of the places that we've talked about here.
Pediatrics is like
So-
obvious.
They're like the core.
They are like.
So,
One thing, when you started this, you said we had to be careful to use the .gov form
Yes.
of this. What kind of frauds have there been that actually try to pretend to be the BCF? Because I've been scammed lots of times. Like,
So there haven't, so a couple years ago, there was a telephone scam that was going on. And we, as soon as we found out about it, that went to our Office of Inspector General and the Federal Trade Commission and a few others who sort of shut that down. We have had conversations with a few of the law firms where we have called them to say, your website looks a little too close and we think you should change it. Or we can have our Office of Inspector General call you. You know, we are aware of these and we try to get people to stop. There was something also that was going on not that long ago through Facebook where I guess depending on what, I'm not on Facebook, so but depending on what you clicked on, you would get sort of this pop-up that looked like it was the VCF. And we found out who was behind that as well and shut that down. So we do take it seriously. With our revamped website, one of the things that is a requirement now across the federal government is there's a line at the top that says something like, you know, you are on an official government website. Here's how you know, kind of thing.
How do you know?
That's good,
But
because it says it.
it's not, yeah. Just beware, just know this and know this when you're talking with other people. We have also heard about confusion where people thought they had registered with us and what they had done was fill out a registration form on a law firm's website. And I want to be clear, I'm not bashing the law firms, right? For many of our claimants, they serve a very useful purpose and they're very helpful. All I'm saying is make sure you're going to our website and just, you know, make sure that others know that as well. Okay, economic loss incurred by the parents and guardians during their stewardship and treatment of young survivors under their responsibility are not clearly demarcated in the current guidelines of the VCF. How will the VCF allow for economic loss that is directly related to the treatment of survivors who were minors at the time of payment and thus under the financial umbrella of their parents and guardians be reimbursed? Is there any guidance that VCF can provide, or is it possible for the VCF to generate guidance? So I think this is the out-of-pocket question, and our guidance is file the claim so that we can take a look at it. Okay, this is the last question, number 8. A good one. They're all good, but this was a very insightful one. They're all good. They're all good. Only Social Security covers mental health. Physical health is covered by VCF, and thus no deductions from Social Security should be made for anything but physical health. In cases where a survivor is filing for disability based on mental health from Social Security, are there any existing memorandum of understanding or guidelines between Social Security and the VCF regarding the provision of benefits? Okay, so what this is getting at is when we are awarding economic loss, which is the lost wages, lost benefits, et cetera, we are required by the statute to offset or subtract any payments that are received for the same eligible condition. So Social Security disability payments, workers' comp payments, et cetera. So we are only making those subtractions when it's based on the eligible condition. So let's say that SSA is entirely, disability is entirely based on mental health, and the eligible VCF condition is rhinitis. That SSA, those SSA disability payments are not going to be offset, okay, because it's not the same condition. What we tend to see more frequently are determinations from SSA that are based on both. So there is a component that's based on the psychological condition percentage of disability, and then there's a percentage of the disability that's based on the physical condition. In those cases, we calculate the appropriate percentage, and we only subtract the amount that's related to the eligible physical condition. Did I get that all right?
You did.
All right. So we get from SSA a very detailed statement that tells us the basis for the disability, the percentage distribution, if there's more than one condition. It tells us the specific disability diagnosis code. So we actually get directly from SSA all of the data we need. And we actually put what we get from them as visible in the online system, so that if it pertained to your claim, you would be able to see what we get from Social Security. And then we use that to figure out the proper amount to subtract. But if it's only based on psychological, we're not subtracting it.
Awesome.
So anyway, okay. Did we answer everything?
You did.
We have a second sheet of questions.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we are always happy. It's always good to see so many of you. And we know and we appreciate how much you do in the community. Really, I mean, it just let us know as questions come up, and we're happy to answer them. So thank you.
Much appreciated.
So anytime you want to come back and do a larger event, bring in, if it's maybe an informational event with some of the partners that may have the information that you're looking for, we could love to be the core.
Definitely, and I'll tell you,
I'll
give you an example of where that's been helpful. So years ago, one group that knew nothing about us was the FBI, and all 3 sites were FBI sites. So when we started talking with and they're a DOJ entity, when we started talking with the FBI, they wanted guidance on what letter they could provide to show proof of presence. So we got them together with NYPD and the New York State Police, our contacts there, so that they could learn from each other. And so those types of forums are very helpful. Yeah.
One of the things is in your form letters, maybe if you could get the health people that I tried to register and I can't because I'm not sick, to say in the bottom of their letter, have you registered with the Victim Compensation Fund? And on your letter, say the same thing, have you registered with the health fund? Because, I mean, I'm on the community board, I'm very embarrassed that I didn't, because I haven't been sick, and I think, oh, well, none of this applies to me.
No,
don't.
And quite frankly, I just think other people who are sick should have everything, I don't want to take away from anybody, and I don't want to use resources that are, unnecessary, that's the thing, you just don't want to be ridiculous. And so I really haven't felt like it applies to me, but now I'm realizing that I've got to get my act together, because I don't know if I have the forms for me, let alone my child who turns 18 in February, so, I mean, that's all of a sudden, it's a very different thing. I mean, and I'm going to have to look up, what's even covered. I haven't paid any attention to any of it, because I think, it doesn't apply to us, but it may.
Right.
Well, that's also part of that sort of second class, it doesn't apply to us.
That's right.
Nobody wants to.
And we make, I know, so this, for those of you who are newer to this, from a VCF perspective, we make absolutely no distinction between responders and survivors. There is absolutely no distinction. The only data we even collect on that is when you answer the question about why you were there. And it has nothing to do with how we evaluate the claim, how we calculate the award, nothing. So from our perspective, there's no difference.
Earlier, Lucian asked, like, how can community board want help? And one of the ways is to identify some of the contact. What kind of point of contact do you need?
So I think this is where we're going to need to come back to you, right? So as we're working on this list, and what we're trying to focus on are the things that we think there are large numbers of claimants who it might benefit.
Yeah, if you're getting
And
people paying
so-
New York City taxes that live below Canal Street, I mean, we should all get a letter, even,
An informational letter.
you know, I'm sure they have the
Yeah,
records from that time.
yeah,
That would
yeah,
be
and we've talked about working,
Is a large union.
yes,
right?
DC 37 we have relationships with.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it seems to
So-
me the tax rolls
So
would be
one
the-
of the things
Yeah.
that we've talked about is getting to these entities, to the right point of contact, to do things like, could you send a letter, right, to everybody who meets this criteria kind of thing? And we're talking about it, as I mentioned, with some of the larger employers, as well as some of the entities that we think, you know, we get this information in, and we're getting it from the claimant who we know worked really hard to get it, or the law firm, right, worked really hard to get it. And if it's one that we think we can get directly going forward, that's what we're trying to do. It's going to take us time, but to your question, as we identify the entities that make sense for us to go to, coming to you and getting help on who to go to, right? Who do we go to within these different entities to try and have a
If
conversation?
you have the DOE, are you already doing the universities and stuff? There's, you know.
So we haven't done anything with any of the
Pace,
universities.
like-
I know that
okay.
I know that the UFT has been doing some outreach. I know that BMCC has been doing some outreach. So again, you
All
know,
the businesses that were here. during
right,
the-
and
Right, the
again,
Downtown Alliance,
What about
yeah.
tenants associations?
Mhm.
Because once again, I think it's
Yep.
getting the residents, it seems to be the hardest thing, well, you know, not part of a union, didn't, you know, the
So-
employer's not downtown.
So what would be really helpful is if you can funnel through, Lucian, if you don't mind, these ideas of places that we can put on our list and see, first of all, if we already have a way to get there, but if not, then work to try and do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, IPN, Southbridge, Gateway, all, you know, really Battery Park City is super organized. I mean, there's a lot of big buildings that we have very good tenant organizations or condo structures. If there is something that we could blast to them informationally, say like, hey, sign up right now, sick or not, were you here between here and here? Just do it. Don't just stop what you're doing and do it.
Yeah.
We could get that blasted out, you know, next week to every building in Battery Park City, almost every resident in Independence Plaza North, Southbridge, you know, we could do that.
Yeah.
And so that's something
Those
that,
are
you
probably
know,
the biggest residential complexes. I mean, there's also.
So for something like that, you know, we can help develop what that material could look
Yeah.
like. We can make sure that it's got the right information and work with you
A
on
lot of
that.
those people will have the children.
Correct.
Right.
Correct,
I
yeah.
want to ask about language capacity,
Mm-hmm.
because even in CB1, there are people who are actually Chinese speaking only, and
Yep.
you may not see them, you may not notice, like they don't show up here. But actually, our office, City Council District 1, actually covers from the east side to the west side. And since the VCF is covering all the people who live south of Canal Street, so is
Not all the way east though, right? Is it?
River to river.
Oh, it is river to river, okay.
So there are major developments on the east side. I'm hearing people who live in Rutgers that they didn't even do anything, and they're Spanish speaking only. So we assume that the information that you always put out, the basic language is at least English, Spanish, and Chinese.
And Polish.
And
We have
Polish.
English,
So-
Spanish, Chinese, and Polish
it's all-
on our website. We
What
all,
about staffing?
so we have,
outreach?
we have bilingual representatives on our helpline, Spanish speakers, and we have a contract with a company that, immediately we can have an interpreter on the phone. So any phone call to our helpline that requires a language other than English, we can cover it in real time. And then our hearings, we will provide an interpreter in any language that is needed for a hearing. We provide that. It is not at cost to the claimant. And
You just have to let us know.
you just have to let us know. And in the form, there's a question, there is a question in the appeal form that says, do you need an interpreter? Do you need and tell us what language, and we will have the person there. So we have Spanish, Mandarin, and Polish because those are the languages early on that we were told were the most prevalent. Certainly if there are other groups out there where it would make sense to translate in other languages, we would certainly consider it.
Okay.
Probably outside of our purview, but is there a program to reach out to people that have moved away?
That is a really hard one. Yeah. So the health program grapples with that too. And everything we've done so far has kind of piggybacked on them. That is one of our biggest questions when we think about outreach is how do you reach the people who are like anywhere, right? Like we have claims from overseas. Right? We know there are pockets, and years ago we worked with local congressional offices to try and get them to send things where we knew, like Arizona, a lot of retirees, Florida, a lot of retirees, right? And it's that question of, do you read your congressman's newsletter when it comes? Maybe, maybe not,
Did you
right?
ever think of any type of,
How do you
like
reach?
maybe a couple of commercials and
So we've
advertisements?
talked about recently public service announcements or something like that. Again, this is all new for us because we thought we were closing. We're thrilled that we're not. And so we're thinking about all of these things.
The health program
And
is
we're
national, though.
actually thinking about bringing someone on board who is focused on outreach and spreading the word about the VCF.
There's a national
Yeah.
provider network it's in every single state of the union.
You can get certified if you're ill,
Anywhere.
Can I just, out of curiosity, how have the numbers been since?
Thank you.
On
On
terms of
claims?
number of claims filed.
So, number of claims filed, well, I can tell
Have they
you.
gone- I know there was.
So I will say this, we just in the last month or two got to the point where more decisions were going out than the number of claims coming in.
Okay.
Which
Oh,
is
wow.
great. So we seem to be settling down at about 600 new claims a month or so. We've awarded over $6 billion. And the other thing that I'll say is when Rupa first came into the position in 2016, we had a lot of claims that had been sitting for more than 3 years. And now we are down to about 16 months from submit to award, assuming we have everything we need. And our goal is to get it to a year or less, and we are working really hard to get there.
Thank you.
So
I know
last
you guys
year,
worked really hard.
we'll be putting out our annual report soon, and that'll have all of our highlights. But last year was it was a really great year from the perspective of we're now permanent, and
Hang on,
we
Jean.
appreciate the community's support in making that happen.
What does she need?
Yeah.
Jean came to
I'm sorry.
discuss something.
I thought I was on the agenda, clearly I'm not. This was a very helpful thing, but, I gotta go.
Go ahead, what is your item?
I'm on the agenda. Are we finished? I don't want.
We're finished. You know where to find us. Do you want us to leave any cards with you?
I'll take, I won't take all of them, but I will take some.
Yeah, we also have these handouts. These are but it seems like you might already have them. The frequently asked questions about young adults and claims for young adults. Just if it's helpful. Is that enough for you?
For the office?
Yeah, or do you want more? I'll give you as many as you want. We have lots of cards.
Yes.
Well, here. Okay, so that's good? Okay. Go. Sorry. Put them out.
Okay.
Get them out there.
Okay.
Get them out
These
there.
or the cards? Oh, these? Yeah, sure. Unless no one else wants one.
I'll leave some for you.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I haven't had a good night's sleep since 2015, when this ban was introduced in my neighborhood. And
Fan?
it's a boiler and a fan that's part of 105 Green Street. And it was erected by Related Management, which owns the 52-story residential high-rise that is opposite my building. And we had thought we had an agreement with them in 2015 when they were found to be in violation by putting that illegal structure out on the side of the building. And they, at that time, had, I have communication here from NOAA, that they were in violation, and they had hired Cerami to deaden the sound, and they didn't do a very good job. And it was worse this time. It deadened it a little bit, but it got much worse this year. I have a letter from my downstairs neighbor who owns the Trinity Boxing Club, and he writes, "It would be a great benefit both to our neighborhood and my business if the sound coming from the building at 105 Duane Street could somehow be ameliorated. The constant hum at all hours has become a quality of life issue, and I feel like if it's not resolved, soon will have a deteriorating effect on the businesses and residents of Duane Street. Several people have complained about the noise, especially in the warm weather when I have my doors open and I'm renting the gym for filming. I would appreciate some action towards this resolution. Thank you, Martin Snow, the president of Trinity Boxing." I've made several 311 calls. I finally had somebody from Department of Environment Protection come and do a reading. 42 is the normal sound that is allowable from something like that. The reading we got was 50. So they're in violation.
Did they give them a violation?
I was gonna read the
They
email
gave
that I
them a
sent.
violation. I talked with Lucian. They're in violation on several, not only with the sound, but they also constructed this giant tube which vents the steam from this boiler. They told us in 2015 that this boiler was an emergency piece of equipment that was only going to be used after Hurricane Sandy for extra energy. They didn't tell us it was a 24-hour thing. So we didn't make a big complaint in 2015. And they put it there in the summer. We ignored it until the winter, when all of a sudden it started to roar and make a lot of noise. And they deadened it a little bit, so we sort of let it go. This time around, it's much, much worse. And that's when we found out that they were in violation and they shouldn't have put it there at all. This is a park that we got when they got 20 extra stories for the building itself.
Duane Street Park? That one?
That little park that's next to that building was a gift to the community, and they've completely destroyed it. You can't sit there. That thing roars and roars. It's deadly. You cannot sit there and enjoy it. So they've taken the park away from us. But I can't get any sleep, because this thing is going on all night long. The hum, the hum, the hum. And now they're absolutely in violation. And I don't trust them for them saying, we're going to fix it, which is what we get back when you talk to them. I don't know, Lucian, if you've been in contact. What are they telling you?
Well, they're in ULURP now, which is the process of getting approval through the Department of City Planning to fix or to come back into compliance with how they should have their plaza. They've acknowledged that the changes they've made to their plaza are in fact outside the boundaries of what they were originally supposed to have. So the changes they made were not legal in the sense of, according to the agreement they had with the city to get the bonus for their plaza, as you said. They presented to Community Board 1 a month or two ago, or 2 months ago. They're still in ULURP. ULURP is a very long process. It starts with the Community Board. It goes for 215 days or so. But the process is not yet over. But in their presentation, they proposed a number of changes to come back into compliance that they've spoken with city planning about. One of the things I was able to verify was dampening of the sound for that emitter. They acknowledge that it's too loud and that they're going to bring it into compliance. And the changes they're making are not in part to stylistically come back into the guidelines, but also they've acknowledged that it's too loud. regardless, Gene, you did the right thing, you called 311, you had a sound test taken, they're in violation, and they can't just be in violation forever. So they'll continue to get violations until it's fixed, and when they make the changes, if they're still in violation, they'll proceed. But as it stands, they have a plan to mitigate the noise per the Department of City Planning. So
Just to give them
they
opportunity to do it.
they essentially they told the city, they told the community board, they're gonna be like, regardless, if it's too loud, they should get a violation. You should get the readings done, and you've taken the time, it's not convenient to have somebody come to your apartment and take a reading. You have to make yourself home.
She already got the reading.
Do you know if
Well,
they
I
have
know,
to-
I'm saying, and she took the time out of her day and her schedule to do that, and it's not convenient. And so for that, but she did the right thing in getting the violation issued to them.
My bed is right up against these enormous 150-year-old windows. For them to come and take another reading, they have to come and stand on my bed, take all my shades and windows and everything out, because I have a wooden blind that's very old. Take that down, get all my linens and everything off, and then open this window to take the reading. I mean, it's completely disruptive to everything, but I did it. I did it to get the reading. They'll come back and do it again, but they did that in 2015. It was illegal then. It's, yes, we're going to make it quiet, and they didn't. I'm telling you, they're going to jerk us around.
They're in the process, they're in the process of getting approval to come into compliance. So I can't make them promise to come into compliance, because essentially they're doing that right now. They've gone through, ULURP is not a light endeavor to take. It's extremely scrutinous. If they don't fix it, I mean, I'm not a sound engineer, but what they presented to the community board was, we acknowledge that this is loud and this is our fix.
Who was at the community board when they did this?
Everybody here, this is a couple months ago.
Somebody has to give them a deadline or something, because, first of all, the park that we got was designed by Thomas Ballsy. It was beautiful. He had these lovely green wired benches that they ripped out and put wooden plank benches. They're ugly. I mean, we're not going to get the Ballsy benches back.
Yeah.
They just, because they didn't, I don't know why they destroyed them, but I would love to have the Ballsy benches back.
Is anybody here on the land use committee? No one?
I was at that meeting, though, remember, that's where they wanted to change the bicycle rack, and I said, leave it inside the park.
Yeah, for 105 Dwayne. Right. Yeah, so, I mean, that was part of the plan. Yeah.
I mean,
So the community board just weighed in on it. We have a resolution about it. It is so recent that the process of approval hasn't run the course completely. But I am sure they're not going to change anything until it's construction season again, which means that the frost date has passed and, they don't need.
lost a number of trees. But I mean, I just can't begin to tell you, I mean, the destruction, and this is related. Money is not an object here in terms of what they've got to put back. But, and they have all their people allowed to have individual air conditioners. So once the winter is over and that thing gets quieter again, or the air conditioners are out, those things start to roar. I mean, it is just enormously noisy. And
One thing has nothing to do with the other. People will not have air conditioning in their apartment.
No. They could build them in a way.
Right, of course.
I'm just telling you,
but one
they
thing
have been a bad neighbor, and all I'm saying is that there's no commitment from them that they are going to get that sound.
But it sounds like there is a commitment now.
Well,
And until they fulfill it, they're gonna continue to get the fines.
All I'm asking is that there be some way that it can get checked, that it works. Because what they did in 2015 was totally inadequate.
But whatever they have now is not what they'll have when they rebuild the plaza to whatever approval is granted for whatever design they propose to the
You know,
community board.
they can mitigate, in Gene's defense, they can mitigate the sound anytime they want. That has nothing to totally
They
do
can
with
do
the,
it tomorrow on the
the
wall.
redesign of the plaza. That's just like soundproofing something, or it has nothing to do with the total structure of the plaza. That's like a separate, they're not mutually exclusive.
And they told us when they put that horrible metal fume that when you sit in the park and you see this smokestack that they put there, they said, we're gonna cover it with greenery, we're gonna paint it green, you're not gonna be able to see it. They never did it. I mean, that's a can of paint. I mean, they're just so, you know, arrogant in terms of, oh, you're just a community, this is your community park.
We got it.
What,
Screw you.
okay,
We got it.
what else, or what, if anything, would you have us do about it next?
What I'm saying to you is, while this ULURP thing is going on, there should be steps. The denting should be number one, the park should be number two. That sound should, I mean, as my neighbor here says, Martin Snow, this is affecting his business. He used to have lovely little tables and chairs out there, he had to take them in. Couldn't sit out.
Did you have a
Did you go
cafe
to the
permit?
meeting? Did you go to the event?
No,
I didn't even know
it's a
about
different situation, Mark. It was just people relaxing outside the box.
Solution,
It wasn't
sounds like they
it wasn't
need
like
to
a
be
cafe.
in that meeting.
Tables is different.
No, no,
Chairs,
The
that's-
meeting,
Yeah.
the CB1 has a resolution on this. I don't know where they are in ULURP, they're probably either past CPC and it's in the council, but it's been long enough where it's way out of CB1 court, but yet the process is not over
There
yet.
are three
But if it's
buildings
240
that-
days, are
Yes.
we on day 181 or what?
I mean, I don't know exactly where we are in ULURP, but the point I'm trying to make is that it is extremely recent they've acknowledged that the plaza is out of compliance, that the changes they made were beyond the scope of what they were allowed to do, and that they had to fix it, including
The sound.
doing something about the sound.
Bob, if the meetings that I came to that meeting at land use, that was about 2-3 months ago.
Something like
So
that.
you're figuring like there's another 5 to 6 months for that process if you're talking about 200.
And
It's
then you're
60
gonna get
days.
to the summer,
When we
you won't be
issue a
able to-
resolution, that's the culmination of our 60 days, then 30 days for borough president,
Here, this
then
is for
60,
you.
50 days,
That's
so
the
60
letter
days
from
for
Mike
CPC,
Dowsett.
then 50 days for the city council. And then the mayor gets a veto, which they never do.
Okay, so we'll
So-
just have to
It
let
doesn't
that
even have
play
to go to
out.
city council, they call it up or not, so they may never call it up.
Okay, so, we'll have to-
So we're tracking, I'm gonna see if
We'll
there's
follow
anything
it.
else they can do to muffle it in the meantime, in the interim.
That's separate from the
But
other
in
process.
terms of like asking them to change the design, we've essentially approved their design.
Yeah, I mean, Gene, I don't think you care about the design as long as if they can muffle the sound.
Yeah, no, and it's gotta include some kind of a wall around it that,
That's a design change. We'd have to go back to see if they
I would just look
contemplated
for
that.
like muffling of the sound so that you can have a peaceful night's sleep instead of worrying about the whole thing, and then that'll take a super long time.
so we'll follow it, and that's all.
Yeah, I'll see if the
That wa- I
design
mean, no, that
involves
wasn't
a
even on
wall.
the agenda, and we put it in, so let's figure out let's find out what these other things are. What is 11 Hubert Street construction discussion?
I'll go over that.
Okay.
Should be quick because the representative's not here. So who's on landmarks here?
He's talking about it now.
Who's on the landmarks committee?
Nobody?
Oh, all right. So, it's not related, but, so, they came to Landmarks last month, just to give you a quick, history. And, it's one of the most egregious, presentations we ever had. And we rejected it, and we voted on it in full board last month. It went to LPC, and LPC, in a rare bit of clarity, is there any more from media here? Are you from the media? All right. In a rare bit of clarity, actually rejected the application, supported us 100%.
okay.
In fact, they rebuked it more harshly than we did. But it's at the corner of Hubert and Collister Street, and if you know Collister Street, it's a little alley, and it's a little gateway from the entrance of the exit from the Holland Tunnel Beach, and it's used to make a right, go up Collister to go to Lake So it's kind of like a little bit of, to avoid everything on Greenwich and all that stuff, so we learned this, so it's gonna be a huge construction project, is basically what it is. So at the Landmarks Committee meeting, I asked the owner representative if he would come to Quality of Life so we can work out, what exactly their construction schedule is gonna be. And the template for this is Citibank, when they start, it's going on for years, but we set it up, what they're gonna do, they have a liaison, they have contact, we have monthly email updates, that kind of thing.
Right.
So you wanna nip this construction project in the bud, particularly since the horrible experience we had with the WeWork building. Even though we had the owner down there, come to Landmarks with crocodile tears, they still had an enormous amount of violations, using cranes without permits, and they got violated for it, but they just didn't seem to care. And apparently.
Sometimes it's cheaper to just pay it and continue whatever they're doing.
They had a wealthy client.
Right.
And I think this is a similar situation where the client here is of extreme means that which you're hoping is not the new norm, where you'll do violations, do work after hours, do work on weekends without permits, and not care about the fines. And it's very difficult to get someone there from the buildings department on the weekends. So basically, what we wanted to do is talk to the owner and say, can we have a liaison contact? Are you going to work after hours? We really won't prefer it. And absolutely no case should there be anything that blocks Collister Street. Because this happened when the new people bought the building, when they were taking debris out of the Collister Street entrance. They weren't doing the construction or anything, they were just removing floors and plasterboard and all that stuff. But they had a garbage truck there that blocked Collister Street. So consequently, cars had to back up onto beach, dangerous situation. So under no circumstances do we want that. To make a long story short, it's unfortunate he's not here. So I suggest that we put the same thing on the
Agenda for next month?
Put it first, or put resolutions first, so we make sure we have a quorum, whatever resolutions we have that month, so include it as in one of the first things before discussions. And if he's not here, we'll just pass a resolution requesting those things and send it to DOB and DOT. Hopefully they'll come, but you might have more information as you spoke to.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they become responsive. Joseph Abadi, who's some part of the team, probably the legal team, had committed to coming to this meeting, and then stopped responding to us. So
this is what worries me.
I don't know if that's an indicator for something. If they don't get their landmarks approval, then maybe they'll just sell the building or something. But either way, we'll keep pushing for them to come to next meeting if that's it.
But yeah, we just want to be on record, and you should do this for any projects that you find in your neighborhood, construction projects, this and that. Ask to have it on the agenda, and we'll find a liaison, and so we can set it up as to what their construction schedule is going to be, so it's not already happened, so they know that they're on the radar, and we're watching them, and that kind of thing. Get a liaison that and all that. So
yeah, between Cora and I, we do pretty good work in digging up somebody who can be responsible. And even if it's like pulling up who the architect and record is from DOB and calling them and harassing them to give us somebody from the construction firm, something like that. But we let us know if there's any buildings that are creating an undue amount of disruption, and we'll certainly.
And if you know prior to, is anyone here on Transportation Committee? Yeah. So this is the exact location that where it came up last month about where there's poor lighting. It's right there. Yeah, so even with the new construction of a new building, it'll still be poor lighting, and so that's going to be on the agenda next month.
Diane?
What if it's hard to figure out, like I have a neighbor who was complaining about construction noise, and it's hard to figure out
who's responsible.
Because apparently she called 311, and then apparently there are 3 different, construction projects.
I would say that it's typically, I mean, you don't need to have the committee take an action for a thing like that, but I think it's a good illustration of what often happens is, we don't live in Marine Park, Brooklyn, right? It's not a bunch of single family houses where you be like, it's that truck, it's like usually you'll hear a sound, you think you recognize the sound, it's like a jackhammer, and then there's a construction site next to you, but then really it's like a truck that's like two places away.
Yeah, yeah.
And like,
amazing.
it's like that weird
It's
thing
amazing.
where the echo effect and multiple people making sound, it's just a different truck that's making the sound. Or, somebody has a permit, but it's the one that doesn't have the permit that's sneakily doing it, and that stuff all happens. So the normal course of events is that I will try, without making you too angry, ask you to go and get a closer look. If you can get a view of the truck, maybe there's a number on the side you can take a picture of. If it's a DOT number, I can look it up. Things like that, just to match the truck with a permit, because there could be like 15 permits around there, but like there's one person that's the actual culprit.
That's
So
what I do.
It's detective work, and Mark is not afraid to go out and investigate and get really in there. I would ask you not to engage with them, but just take pictures, and just seeing what the type of work is helps me match things up to the permit. I'll look at the stipulations of the permit, pictures of the truck, if it has a contractor or subcontractor's name on it. Sometimes it's somebody working for DOT or Con Ed. It may not be Con Ed, but they're doing work on behalf of Con Ed. So I can still yell at Con Ed, So that kind of information is always super helpful, because I'm not there at 3 in the morning. So,
A lot of my neighbors are senior citizens.
right, and that makes it so, yeah. But what I can do is I can yell at everybody. I can say, like, if we're pretty sure it's over here and there's 5 of them, I'll call through until I figure out who it is. If somebody cops to it, and then I'll yell at DOT, whatever. But depending on how much information is available, I'll work with it.
Can I chime in? I do the same thing, and sometimes we actually work together, like when we get the information.
Tag team.
Because all these agency staff, depending on what's going on around town, they're not just working for CB1 area. There's actually sometimes only one staff working for the whole borough. So it would be helpful, you're not going to go downstairs, but if at least you give us a shot of that area, and we're going to track it down, and if so happen the DOT staff is not busy for that period of time, we go through them one by one, calling them.
Yeah.
So between Lucian and I, trying to identify what's going on over
Yeah.
there. And sometimes he knows something that I don't know, so we're always like
We share a lot of
copying each
information.
other. And that will be a little faster.
It can be aggravating, but we can only work with what we have. And I wish if they paid me to be around at 3 in the morning, walk around the district, swinging my baton or whatever, and like finding people jackhammering off permit. That could be a cool gig, but I'm not around, so I got.
If I hear it, I'll go out there.
You can call Mark. Mark will investigate at 3 in the morning.
And the thing is too, is the police actually have the ability to shut down a construction site if they don't have the proper permits, but they'll almost never do it.
They can do it.
Yeah, but they have the authority to do it. I actually got them to do it once at 53 Beach at WeWork building. The guy was there 1 o'clock in the morning doing something, and I called, and I think they just got sick of me calling them all the time, and they told him to get the hell out of there. So.
I mean, they have the authority to take e-bikes off the sidewalks, but then they can do that.
Yeah. All right, my item was quick too. It's number 2, that NIOSH CDC study. So basically what it is there's another group, like Bob mentioned the group that he and I are on, Jill, number 10, Diane, Catherine's on it,
What
So
group is it?
The Survivor Steering Committee
Oh, right, yeah.
for the Zadroga bill. So we're an advisory committee. There's an advisory committee that's directly to NIOSH, the CDC, and Dr. John Howard as well. That's the STAC. In September, they passed this very brief resolution. It just says the World Trade Center Health Program STAC urges Dr. John Howard to move with deliberate speed to assemble the 9/11 Millennial Study. They're going to change the name because it's actually not only millennials, there's Gen Zers in there too that are younger. But that cohort. Furthermore, everything needed should be done to protect the study and to ensure it's moving forward. And they passed that in support of the registry who's going to be doing the actual study
so that they could get the money from NIOSH, to help to secure it. They passed it in September. I haven't been able to bring it to us yet, but I was just wanting us to pass it could be the exact same one, from all I can, just in support of them and the registry as well, and of course the millennials and the Gen Zers that are going to be studied. Because what happened is, when the registry was open, it was only open for a brief period, and a lot of people are not in it. And so I think from recollection, there's probably only like 3,000 of the kids in it. That number could be off, but I think that's it, around 3,000. So in this case, the DOE provided, finally, this is something that we have been fighting for years. I can say, why can't the DOE share information with the Board of Ed? Before it was even the stack, like before the bill passed and everything, been asking for this. Finally, they're going to let them work with them, and the DOE has provided 19,000 addresses of young adults, adolescents, from this group to the registry, and they started out with a random sampling and seeing what kind of response they got back, and then based on the response they got back was further to whether or not NIOSH was going to support a study happening. And so we passed that part, and they are supporting a study happening. So just to remain just to further support them so that the funds and everything remain secure and they can fully go forward with it. And these children who haven't been examined, in this regard ever, after all this time, can finally be so. So you guys have any issues with that? Okay, so that's that item. Do we have enough people?
No.
I don't have a vote sheet for this committee because we shouldn't put one together, but we have 8 people. So if you want, you can just take a vote, and if there's not enough people, then we'll handle it.
Revisit it after?
Yeah.
Okay, so all in favor?
Are you including public?
Okay, so the full members first?
Yeah.
Is that how you do
once
it?
yeah.
Or separate? Okay.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 full board members.
And public members. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Recusals? Nope.
So just so you know, this is a little off topic, but a little bit related to as a procedurally, like with stuff like this that is deadlines, stuff like, and whatever anyone wants to present it, it's fine, But I had a situation last with Transportation Committee with the lighting thing. Were you at that meeting? So the chair of that committee said that, you were there, said that no agenda item may be initiated by one single person. Now, you just did that, right? So,
And we think it's fine.
exactly. And so did, what's the name that was just here about the 105 Dwayne? Jean, right, yeah, so same thing, right? So it seems like there's some kind of.
So we have to get a group together and work on it.
So I don't want it for a discussion now, I'm just throwing it out there how.
Yeah,
I don't understand what that means, though.
Neither did I, neither did we.
Yeah. I mean, technically, somebody should have made a motion and seconded it.
Yeah.
For this to be a resolution.
Yeah.
It's so non-controversial.
I was gonna say that, but I was like, but you know I'm like.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't know what.
But do we usually do that? If something's on the agenda that we're gonna do a resolution, do we usually? First, somebody makes a motion
it was on the
first?
resolution.
That doesn't feel familiar to me.
We discussed it like months ago, and then I'm just telling you what he said. So I don't know how this is how the guidelines are for this, or I'm fine.
I'm fine with doing a motion, but I don't think I don't feel like I've ever done that before. Like anybody's ever done that at a committee. We've done a motion first.
But I just want the committee to be aware how
it's like
silly this is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. Just so everybody knows, it's when it came up, I actually proposed it to Anthony and Tricia and Pat. So it wasn't actually just me, a party of one. But I still think it's ridiculous.
I did the same thing too, and I even said that. I said we were talking about this
Mark,
for
you
months.
on my email too.
For months we were talking about the issue that I had.
It's okay.
And then, but it seems like there's something. I just to let you know, because I might bring it up at the full board.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth
you know.
I mean, you might even want to bring it up to the executive committee, just to kind of have all the chairs on the same
Yeah, it makes
page.
it makes no sense.
but-
It's like, it seemed to me personally like it was selectively.
I mean, I think that every chair
No,
has
so-
some amount of discretion
Yeah.
in terms of how the committees run, in terms of motions. However, I do think that that discretion still lives within the boundaries of technically what the powers of the chairs are in the bylaws and Robert's rules and all those other layers of regulation that we're governed by. However, I think it's a worthwhile.
Is there something in the bylaws that says a group has to get together to
No,
form
however,
an item?
I
So then
think
she's
the
wrong,
chair-
and that should be
The
corrected.
chair doesn't.
I mean, chair could
There's
not.
some procedural things where the chair doesn't have to recognize a motion. And
Even if it's on the agenda already?
I mean, that's getting into the weeds of Robert's rules that I
Oh, okay.
can't answer.
But our bylaws though, and if you remember, I fought for this and the full board voted on it. If the committee has a majority vote to put something on an agenda for that committee, the chair of the committee and the chair of the board cannot strike it down.
Because that sounds like a party of one.
Yeah. No, well, if say,
We're talking about
say,
party work,
say
right?
you
That's
said
what-
you have an issue and you wanna bring it up, and you say, does anyone think it's a good idea? Does everyone from the committee agree? If it's a majority vote, say we put it on the agenda next month, that's it. They can't stop it. So.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah,
I
well,
agree.
That's in our bylaws.
Yeah, I would, when you investigate it, I think you should look at the
I
powers
was gonna say we could talk about it executive committee.
powers of the committee chair and recognizing motions.
I think the executive committee.
That's probably where it
It's
lives.
like a concise thing with all the,
It's only
the deleted, right?
Yeah, but we need to know where this is coming from and.
I mean, I've been on the community, I was on community board 11, and I remember there were times where at full board, someone was making a motion and the chair says like, I don't recognize your motion because they didn't want to
Well, that-
contemplate it.
that
And
I'm
I remember
familiar
saying,
with
saying
too.
over and over, like, I don't recognize your motion, I don't recognize your motion. And someone's like, can he do that? And I'm like, well, yes, he can do that. But I don't, I think if that's like a less formal way of doing that,
Yeah.
or if you can or can't do it, I think it's worth
But if you
investigating.
bring out a point of order or parliamentary procedure, the chair cannot stop that.
I think it's worth investigating.
Yeah, so.
All right, what are we gonna do about
All right.
large venue? So we make
Okay.
having a separate
Okay,
meeting?
So here, venue-wise, let me
We're gonna
give you some
have the committee
updates,
then.
okay?
Okay.
Update time. The Office of Nightlife is coming next month to this meeting.
Okay.
Probably the night mayor herself,
Wow.
Ariel Pallets,
That woman.
and they are going to hear about what we're experiencing. In the meantime, I've sent them N15s, our resolution complaint in the compendium, because I want them to take comprehensive action on that.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm going to preface all this with thanking Councilmember Chin's office for getting them engaged with us, getting them on the horn, having them come very quickly. Thank you, because we got right to the chief of staff with Councilmember Chin's help. So they're coming. It didn't work schedule-wise, and the chief of staff didn't want to come by herself. She wanted to come with the head of the Office of Nightlife. So what I'd like for you all to do now is give me a list of things from the venue point of view that I can send ahead to their office so they can come prepared for the next meeting of the venue kind of working group, which this is serving as right now.
Okay, so
You mean
let's,
places that we have complaints
So the venue
against?
working, this is the issue, this is what I mean by the venue working group. Community District 1 has too many commercial spaces that were formerly financially, they were purpose-built for financial institutions of one way or the other. To wit, extremely large banks or trading floors, which now that the financial industry is shrinking, they no longer need such things. And now the highest and best use of these spaces are venues for theater,
Like Live Nation, that's like.
for concerts. So
Convene,
what
is convene.
convene, yes.
Convene. 18 Exchange 20 William, Sleep No More intends to set up a extremely large experience kind of venue. 123 Greenwich, Live Nation and Legend Hospitality contemplating a partnership to have a massive concert venue. The limiting factors here is we have either an ancient street grid that doesn't have the throughput to bring in the types of for-hire vehicles that will likely be used for this, or it's in an area where the security zone and the street grid has been altered beyond belief, and so that the traffic patterns to get there will be ridiculous. And for in this case of 123 Greenwich, which is former American Stock Exchange building, because in order to not be knocked out by the 200-foot rule, they're putting their official entrance on the side of the building. That makes even less sense for a crowd point of view. So, what the purpose of the venue task force is?
It's a loophole.
It's a more comprehensive look at. It's not just an SLA issue, but it's also Department of Transportation, Taxi Limousine Commission. But the Office of Nightlife is the focal point that we're supposed to engage with to have a multi-agency response to a discrete problem. And the discrete problem can either be one bad actor, like M15, which is an excellent example of the worst, or an issue that I'm describing with the venues within our district. So both of those, I'm going to ask them to contemplate what their responses are and give them that time to do that.
So can we send out an email to, of course, this committee, and maybe licensing, the members of licensing and the members of transportation, telling them in advance that this meeting is going to be next month and that we're trying to compile questions over the course of the next couple weeks or something?
I'd like to take a couple now, but I'll absolutely do that.
Okay.
The only other rub is that I will be out of town at the next Quality of Life meeting, so somebody from the office will be in my place, and so I really want to put a bow on this really nicely because I would prefer to be here to do that, but I am physically not here.
Does that include the cafes, like the outdoor cafes, where now they can keep their tables and chairs out 24 hours? Is that under the purview of this thing?
No, that's more of a Department of Consumer Affairs. Yeah.
The Office of Nightlife is under BOMI.
Yes.
Do they also tackle the film shoot impact, negative impact?
It's a worthwhile. I mean, it's technically under Mayor's Office of.
Because they are under the jurisdiction of BOMI.
They are. I think it's worth a question to what degree they'd handle that, but I'm not hopeful.
Movie and entertainment.
Just another, the reverse side of that question, if you have something like the American Stock Exchange and you don't use it for Live Nation kind of big events, what
can you do?
What is it good for? What
storing corn?
Yeah, seriously, can we have a supermarket?
I mean, we have a lot of these things, but what are they good for if not big events?
I think that's valid.
Lucian,
Valid.
can you bring up specifically the Fleet
Turn them
Theater
into
with their outdoor
aquarium.
rehearsals?
Fleet Theater is something that we're gonna, you and I are gonna continue working on.
Right, but is that, besides that, is that something that you can also bring up with them?
I don't.
I'm just asking.
I mean, I think if it's asking if theaters, like traditional theaters.
But that's the problem when I called 311, because like they didn't want to take the call because it wasn't a club, but it's like, you know what I'm saying? But
So, okay,
it's the
so
same thing.
I'm just gonna start writing things down because we're generating good stuff here. And so I'm gonna say traditional theaters.
Well, this wasn't inside, let me just explain to and I'm I supported them when it's just a good cultural arts theater that's in the neighborhood, but over the last year, they have a little courtyard outside the theater just for people to relax in. They've started to hold rehearsals outside till 11, 12 o'clock at night when they have a theater that we approved. And so there's 50 people outside. It's not an outdoor cafe. They're just holding rehearsals. And so mostly through the spring, summer, fall. You know, so I brought that up to Lucian and.
Yeah, that's a good one. What was the other one? There was that one. So somebody had one just before that we kind of talked about.
You mean his question as to what else would we use the buildings for?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good question for the board. If we don't wish to have those types of uses there, then what could they do? Because it's landmarked. I mean, we don't want them to knock it down,
Right.
but also we don't want them to put in what is probably the best fit for the thing. So, but are we okay with it if the city were to make changes? You know, like if the streets ran in directions that made more sense to get automotive traffic in and out without having to cut through Battery Park City, then would it make more sense?
The street is still the same width and length, I mean.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, they're too narrow.
So, you know, but these are,
Properties are still the same.
think pie in the sky, like, do you wanna just like say like, for-hire vehicles aren't allowed on some of those streets at all?
You
I mean,
can't say that.
but cities do that.
But, I mean, I'm not
Cities
for
do
it,
that.
but
We don't,
how
but we
could
could.
Well, that wouldn't be necessarily conducive to a venue, because then people are not gonna wanna walk to a venue,
Yeah, no,
you know.
something like Pioneer Works, for instance, is an alternative, which is in Brooklyn, where they have artists in residence, and they do have shows, and they do have programs, but it's not
on
like.
that scale.
Yes.
It's not on that scale, it's not
Yes.
rock and roll, which I love rock and roll, but. I'm
The
saying-
cultural center does some stuff like that,
Right,
artists in
it's
residence, yes.
A cultural center that does,
Right.
that is within
You know,
the
like
scope of the
Give Me
neighborhood.
Dance, where we have our, some meetings, that's, Give Me Dance, yeah.
Yeah.
That's.
On Chambers Street.
Right, like those, like perfect, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whether it's dance or art or music, as long as it's not like 3,000, you know. with-
late at night. Right, Pioneer Works does a lot of events, but they'll be in the afternoon often. They're not all late at night
Right.
events.
But these things are these things owned by
The one that they wanna put on,
So then it-
Exchange Place, that little narrow
For us to
corner and street,
prevent them from.
7 days a week, 365 days a year, they wanna have this thing, it's like, are you serious? You're gonna kill people. Like, what does that do to a human being? Seriously.
Solution, that's one of, like with 1, 2, 3 Greenwich and this, is, they think this jurisdiction that the city might have is traffic congestion. And is there a viable traffic plan for these venues? It's safety, pollution, whatever else you wanna throw in there, but.
Yeah.
But, and I think a question, probably not for them, but for the SLA, is the, particularly with 1, 2, 3 Greenwich, is, how can I put it? They're not necessarily in the spirit of compliance using Greenwich Street as their main entrance to avoid the 200-foot rule. And even though they technically might be correct, it doesn't make any sense. Why would you use that as the main entrance?
Right.
And you don't have a traffic plan, and so that's one way to. It might be good and
Well,
bad.
it's a little funky, like, it's like intentionally
yeah.
putting liquor
Right.
by kids.
Right.
You're doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, they're squeezing everyone through like a mouse hole
Right.
to avoid being knocked out.
Right.
So
Which I think is
these
a
issues do factor in at SLA.
Maybe that's a fire
You know,
hazard.
Well,
Diane?
Yeah.
There's also security issues, because there've been some clubs that, well,
Yeah,
they might have
security,
security inside, but then people might be drunk and outside and causing disruption and mayhem, and they say, well, that's not their purview, that's the, you know.
Right, and I don't know what type of expert one would seek to find an answer to the question, but like how much of that can a resident take? How much, because it's not just the infrastructure, in my opinion, upon like the streets and the businesses and things, how much can a person take of boom, boom, boom every day and... No, but I'm sure there is some sort of expert that could say, listen, it's unhealthy after X amount of, hours to have to listen to this kind of noise or to be, like basically put out of your home because.
Sustained base, I mean, there's
Yeah.
an analogy to this, like, well,
You don't even
everyone
know
loves
if
windmills, but if you live near a windmill,
Right.
and you hear that 24 hours a day, people are going out of their minds.
Well, people spend fortunes to live next to the beach so they can hear the surf coming in.
That's a big difference, yeah. So,
I also added, so I took that down.
that's a
Diane, I
real
took it
thing
with
with the
you.
windmills.
I also added I was conjuring Joel and,
Oh,
can some street directions be changed in light of worst case scenario conditions. So I hear a lot from people downtown, that the direction change of Wall Street created a lot of issues.
Yes,
Because, so that's something that we'd like to, and really, I think SLA questions are in bounds for the Office of Nightlife, because I think, and until they prove me wrong by saying so otherwise, but I think they're also supposed to be our advocates to the SLA as well. So for the level of the city of New York and the mayor, they are to advocate for what they see as being issues into the state, because if the State Liquor Authority doesn't listen to the mayor's office, then who do they listen to?
Should we be trying to see if the DOT can come the same day?
Well, that was I gonna bring up, was, two things, like you see a CB2 agenda all the time. Every month they have somewhere where they're requesting a curbside regulation be changed to something that they want. So, I mean, that can factor into it, and also, I've seen it where, yes, we change direction of streets. I mean, if we request that, they will look into it.
Yeah, I think, but I think that's, I think it's totally in bounds for us to say, Office of Nightlife, you know, what role do you play in either backing us up with DOT or going to the DOT on our behalf? If we identify that, you know, if you say, like, look, you guys, to some degree, you have to be out, like, on the normal working clock at 3 a.m, because if you're not out at that time, how can you be a real kind of oversight over nightlife, right? So they're out there at those hours. If we say, go to Wall Street and hear the cars blast the horns because they're backed up in front of Cipriani, and they say, like, well, we identify the problem, we are corroborating what CB1 is saying and all the residents, will they advocate the DOT with us to do that? If that isn't
It might be good to have someone from DOT here, I think.
well, I mean, eventually, I think that's right.
Cora has an answer.
What's that?
When Ariel first became the director,
Oh, I don't remember off my head, it was
she gave a
a
presentation
couple
at
thousand
the
or something,
board.
maybe more.
The role, she emphasized, the role is to help these businesses to be good citizens, the good practices. They're not here to be a police to tell them like, this is wrong, this is
But
like.
Cora, isn't the head of, I have just read, I don't know, she was a club owner.
She's a club owner, I read that too.
And she had many violations herself before.
Yeah, it's in East Village,
So
yeah.
I'm just saying, like, she might be a great person, but it seems that.
A little
she might be
biased,
skewed on- like,
possibly.
I would like to see somebody a little more down the middle.
Fox watching the hen house.
I'd have to look it up.
I don't remember.
I may have a questionnaire that has the capacity in it, but I
Is
don't.
it thousands?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Big.
yes.
Yeah, that's
couple of
probably
thou- I can't remember the exact number,
That's
but-
gonna make it
Which
one
place, the
of
Live
the
Nation?
largest
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
venues in the
3,000.
city.
I mean, Legends Hospitality and Live Nation, right?
3,000.
Legends Hospitality, that's the Yankees.
Yeah.
Right.
But thousands is really.
It's thousands,
Yes,
definitely,
it's-
for sure.
It was 3,000, I remember.
We have a case study in
So that's definitely one of the largest.
South Street Seaport on the top of
That
the
was very
building.
good, it's very good.
That has very big crowds, and what kind of problems have there been with that? I mean, have there been
With
problems?
Pier 17?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, have there been a lot
Southbridge,
of
I mean,
someone-
It's been
For real.
manageable as of like the past year or two. However, there have been events at Pier 17 that became too large that
I'm talking about
the community
past-
couldn't really handle.
I'm talking about, you know,
That's
the
not
past
what
but
year.
they
In the
also
past like
have-
2 years, no.
They
That's
also
the
have
one
like
we have
more,
to-
they have like
Take your area.
direct highway access and, you know,
Taxis,
they're not
standing.
as,
That's not a regular
like,
basis, like Live Nation would be a regular.
Yeah.
thing.
Tax-
Right, Live Nation will be a regular basis, but just for one day, Drake showed up down here and the whole lower Manhattan went crazy. It was like we were practically shut down.
One day is different than like.
Yes, when he was at Pier 17.
and look, different types of events affect people in different ways. Like, remember when someone from Pride comes every year and asks for the 4 a.m. thing? Never have ever had a complaint from CB1.
Right.
I did get a call from somebody in Brooklyn who was across the river, and they're like,
Oh, wow.
the noise was incredible, and I'm like, whoa, like this, do I count this one as a complaint? You know,
It does
like,
travel on the
you know?
water.
Yeah, it does.
it's like well, that's
It's worse,
fine.
yeah, you
I'm
could
like,
be
you know,
next
it's only
to it,
once
not
a
hear
year, you have to
people,
worry
and
about it,
it
but
gets
Nice to
worse.
hear for a good cause,
yeah, but of course, but that, you know, also we have to kind of think about like, you know, there is a scope, and like my scope is CB1. So if someone calls me from Brooklyn, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can help you. Yeah. Huh?
A 3,000
Yeah.
person venue for live music has so much attached to it,
Yeah.
just in terms
Right,
of
I mean, that's,
crowd
there's so
control
many
and-
issues, there's security,
It's a
there's,
monster.
there's trash,
It's a monster.
right,
There's
sanitation, there's
parking,
traffic,
there's
there's
trans-
noise, pollution, there's, oh, I don't know, all kinds of stuff.
And a small door, they're gonna put 3,000 people, is this?
No, they won't do that. That'll
They'll use
be their application, the SLA,
Right, but they're
as
going
their
to
main
open
entrance,
that
and then they'll
second-
let everyone else on the other
Right.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are some pretty good ones. I would still, I'll still solicit more from the different committees. In terms of next steps, so one other item is, I received notice from 20 Exchange 18 William that they intend to come in February.
Oh, okay.
And so
Oh,
I'm
wait.
working right now with
So-
Susan
so we're
to
gonna-
set a special meeting date for that.
Yes,
So
there'll
we
be a lot
need
of people for
we
that.
need a special meeting date before they come.
Uh,
We have to. If they come to William Street and we haven't had a meeting that Joel was at, that Megan was at, I'm telling you, it's gonna be a problem.
Time to advise the residents.
Yeah.
they're meeting first with the different, with the heads of all the, condo board, co-op boards first.
I think if we can get a working group, whoever wants to participate in it regularly, a meeting of those people, again, of the three committees, members of the three committees, transportation, quality of life, and licensing and permits, I think if they're coming, I think we should try to get those people together prior to that happening.
So is there an official working group yet?
That's what I'm saying, I think we
Yeah, I
need
mean,
to,
this is
we
like
need
the
to
first kind of, like,
officially,
meeting
we
of
need
it,
to,
so
we
the
need to
membership
officially do it.
The
Yeah.
membership is more fluid, because
It'll just be on the
working group
books.
is a structure that's a little bit easier to
So we
manage.
can bang out a
Yeah.
resolution and send it to
Yeah.
wherever.
Well,
Otherwise, the same thing can potentially happen again. They're gonna show up at the meeting, and we're gonna be like, this is our first time talking about it
So
amongst each
So you're
other.
working on a date with Susan for a special
February.
meeting in February, or?
Again, I may not be at that meeting because I'm out of town, so
So pick a
it's like-
date that you'll be here.
it's a pretty narrow, selection that I have.
Yeah, Dan.
I know this may not be the topic for.
The licensing's on
It sounds
February
like
12th,
February's
right?
gonna be- The agenda's gonna be pretty full, but I'm thinking of future.
Are you here on the 12th?
I don't know if there's any way that.
So make the special meeting that date, and the rest of it another date.
It's a thought.
And
It's a thought.
meanwhile, we don't have a supermarket at Independence Plaza, and now they're putting in this.
Private parents club?
Yeah, in this.
Yeah, that's weird.
Putting in what?
A private parents club.
Oh, they came to, they came to.
Oh, that's
the-
where
They came to, I think we voted against the, that was-
They're coming back next
They're
month.
coming back next month, yeah.
Oh, we had
Is that
reservations
planning?
about
If she
it,
wants to talk
and
about
we
all
weren't
all
supportive
the
of it at
empty
the initial
storefronts?
meeting.
Could be.
Yeah, so people, parents can come and drink
Well,
and
it's a
commiserate.
quality
of life.
Right, someone will watch their kids while they drink.
They had a very poor presentation, put it that way.
So just for supermarkets,
But you
this
don't
doesn't,
tell somebody when to open up a business.
We're not getting, we're not getting, meanwhile, we're not getting amenities to benefit the resident, at least the residents of IPN and surrounding areas, like a basic, like a nuts and bolts basic supermarket. And we have all these empty storefronts, plus this other space is coming. But, I mean, there's empty storefronts, that's an issue for not just IPN.
Well, security.
One of the things, that's Diana, one of the things I read about that could help maybe in the future, the city is contemplating like commercial rent stabilization, right, Cora?
Yes, yeah, that's, Gail's working on that.
Right, and so
yeah.
that would be something that would make it easier for certain businesses to open up.
It's a legacy.
To remain in neighborhoods, not get chased out of
No,
neighborhoods.
it's a legacy thing, where a business has been there over, like, say, 25 years, and they would have some sort of quasi
Right, so that would
rent
be
stabilized
one way
protections,
that-
but not for anything new.
Right, of course.
Well, that's not gonna happen in the
well,
near term.
I used to be Gail's economic development
She's been working
policy
on this for
analyst,
years.
and this was my policy portfolio.
Oh.
And I would say that all proposed legislation that gives businesses some amount of staying power, whatever mechanism it is not gonna be easy to get in. So I think,
Very difficult.
from a strategic standpoint, bank on alternative strategies. I think you talked about supermarkets. Mariama said, what's the best like host committee for that? I think there's a couple different options. I think planning was one that came up. In Upper Manhattan, their zoning exists that if you put in a permanent supermarket in your building, you get essentially a floor, a free floor of floor area. But the way that it's written, it goes into your deed, and that space that you build out for that store could only be used for a supermarket forever. And the only way to get rid of it is if you chop a floor off your building, and no one's going to do that. And so that
something
was
their
originally
community board did?
that study that allowed that to go into place only looked at food deserts in Upper Manhattan. Now Gail did a look at the supermarket. You know, we did a survey of every single supermarket in Manhattan,
Yeah.
whether or not it was like qualified to be like a real supermarket based on that criteria. Lower Manhattan has terrible. I mean, you all know.
I thought
You
there
have
was a give back to the builder or the owner.
Yeah, and so
for that
I think that Lower Manhattan would certainly, I mean, to me, I think it would qualify under the same criteria for food deserts in terms of physical grocery stores. Now, it's not the same, there's a lot of service for delivery and people are generally well served. However, I think there's an argument to be made about having physical supermarket locations per the zoning.
Well, we lost both. On the east side, we lost Pathmark, and on the west side, they lost Food Emporium, so there's none. I mean, no real supermarket.
There's a real eco problem with delivery anyway, though.
Yeah, it's whole
And
paycheck.
both turned into residents, right?
Well, there's all
Emissions
kinds of
and-
pollution.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a bad thing.
So I think this is good. I mean, you all really put your minds to it, and we have a good initial list. If you want to invoke a working group meeting, the working groups are not like official committees per se. We did that so other people can be a part of it. And so what the end result though is the working group has to present its findings to this committee, and then this committee can pass a resolution. So that being said, if you all, as a working group, want to organize your own meeting as the working group on this specific topic and invite other people to join you, you don't have to do it through the office necessarily. Like, let me know so I can track that you guys are meeting, but you don't need me to set the date or the place or the location, because we want you guys thinking about it.
Are you available as a
I
moderator?
mean, that's, you know, I could try to be, but you just have to let me know. You all lead with your initiative, and I'll do my best to.
Maybe we can ask that in the email then too, like if other people would feel that we need one before this item comes up. I feel we do, but maybe other people say, oh, we can just go straight to the item, and that's fine.
Do you or someone else here want to take point on that?
Okay. I will.
I nominate her.
I second the nomination.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mariama. Okay, so I'm done.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Meeting adjourned.
What about